All right, there we go. I love when YouTube takes 30 seconds to even acknowledge that I've started. All right.
Pause. Woo.
Yay! Woo! Hey, we're live. Welcome to Talking Heads, everyone. Episode 253, your once-weekly live show for the latest in beer and tech news. I'm Jeff.
I'm Ian.
Thank you so much for joining the show on this Wednesday night or in podcast form over on Anchor.fm or wherever your favorite podcasts are found. If you've never seen the show before, we talk beer, we talk tech, we talk games, pop culture, entertainment, usually some Star Trek, and tonight, some chess. All super chats are read on the air so long as they will not permanently demonetize the channel. We do drink alcohol on the show, and if you're drinking along with us, alcoholic or not, let us know in the chat and we'll give some early show shoutouts as we go along. Last but not least, if you'd like to take part in the super secret chat and the even more super secret after party, think about joining the Patreon. Link is down in the video description. As a bonus, you'll get exclusive access to my Discord server, where you can talk with myself, John, Rhett, Steve, Ian, all the hosts from Talking Heads, and join the awesome community that hangs out over there. And it's now officially a doctor's appointment. How you doing, sir?
Every appointment's a doctor's appointment when you're a doctor.
That's right.
It's going well. It's going well. We're in the same time zone, so this makes sense for once.
Yeah, this is weird. Like normally, like you're waking up or even just going to bed when I'm when I'm ending the show.
Ever since you moved to the earlier time slot, it's gotten worse because now I think you start.
Was it 3 a.m.,
2 a.m. or 4 a.m. my time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's what, 9 hours between us?
8.
Okay, yeah.
So if I somehow managed to not sleep properly and get up really early, if I didn't catch your stream, I'd catch the after party.
Yeah.
And now that you're early, I don't seem to catch you at all. So
that's all right. You're there in spirit. So for those who don't know who this is Dr. Ian Cutress, also known as Tech Potato over on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to his channel if you haven't done so already, although I don't know too many of my peeps who don't know who this is. And you are joining us from a hotel room in San Jose for some reason. What are you down there for?
So this week is, along with launching other processors in the market, is Intel Innovation. Innovation is Intel's attempt to rekindle its fabled Intel Developer Forum, IDF, that ran until about 2016, 2017, where it was cut from Intel's portfolio for not being relevant to its market. Intel is very insistent that developers are relevant to its market, and under the auspices of the CEO, Pat Gelsinger, Intel now runs a series of what they call ON events, 2 a year, one called Vision, one called Innovation. As it might sound, Vision is about the future, Innovation is about what people are doing today, and it just so happens that this year at Innovation, it is developer focused. However, I am not necessarily a software guy, I'm a hardware guy. Jeff's a hardware guy. And I'm very much not a software guy.
Right.
They were actually talking about some hardware this week. So full disclosure, I am an analyst. I am a person that these companies pay to help them not screw up. Yes. Intel is a client, AMD is a client. Intel paid for my trip and my hotel to be out here. That all being said, I did rough them over the coals quite a bit this week, but that's what they pay me for. So
right. I mean, now instead of just being, a journalist or an influencer or whatever you have, where sometimes there's some back and forth where you say something negative and they go, "Hey, that wasn't very nice," and you're like, "I'm sorry, do a better job next time." But then they won't sample you for one season, and now it's like they're paying you to not say nice things to them and then thanking you for the opportunity.
Well, it's a case of if I do spot an opportunity where they may be perceived negatively in the market, if I if they tell me early enough, I will provide my input.
Mm-hmm.
They may or may not listen to that input. It depends how early on in the cycle it is.
Right.
So a lot of those, what would have been public call outs before, now become more private conversations. But Intel, AMD, IBM, Qualcomm, they've used analysts for decades. This is not anything new. I just changed my career slightly. And if that makes me a shill for Intel, then I'm also a shill for AMD. I'm also a shill for Qualcomm. I'm also a shill for MediaTek. I'm also a shill for IBM. You know, if you take one person's money, you're a shill. If you take everybody's money, you're just as independent as you were before.
That's right. Yeah. He will not shut up about the Power 9 processors, though. Like, I cannot get...
Well, no. So one of the things that I do now with people like Jeff is if Jeff had any questions about a product, about a feature, he would go to, say, the Intel team, ask them what needs to be done, go to AMD to ask what needs to be done. He can now also reach out to me. I am one of those press outreach people. For example, I met somebody at the show who's new to the semi space, works for Reuters, and she really wanted to know about the chip industry. And I said, look, I can tell you a million stories from here to Sunday about how things work. Just jump on a call, and that's now a service I offer for press and quotes. YouTube people don't use quotes, but the printed press still do.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to open my beer real quick, and then I think we have some news to talk about. Some news that you and Paul over at Tom's Hardware kind of stumbled into, shall we say. For those interested, I'm drinking a Ninkasi Tricerahops tonight. It is unfortunately, this is not a triple IPA. It's just a 3-hop IPA, clocking in at 8%, and it's a fantastic classic Northwest IPA. Later, since Ian is on the show, I did grab literally the biggest cider that I have in my fridge, so we'll circle back to that. And I think you went to the lobby and grabbed a drink, didn't you?
Yeah, so I just have one question before you start, because I always have beer questions when I come on. Does triple IPA, triple India Pale Ale, mean it's been to India 3 times before you've got it?
You're not far off. Actually, typically the double IPA or triple IPA has to do with either the body or the process. There's also an ABV requirement. So to be considered a double or a triple, it has to be 8% or higher. And so, usually if you find like an 8.5% IPA, they'll call it a double IPA. It usually refers to either the hopping process, as far as do they add it during fermentation, or are they back hopping later in the beer making process? Or it can also be the number of hops that are added in. So a triple hop could be a 3-hop IPA. So
when you're talking about body and procedure, are you referring to the person drinking it as well? Do they have to have body and process?
Sometimes it's less of a willful body, but it does develop. So
I went down to the lobby of I guess I'm in a Marriott, so I have Angry Orchard hard cider, because that's all they had that I may have drunk. As I said last time I was on the show, I'm not a beer drinker, I'm a cider drinker.
Yeah.
So bottoms up.
Yeah, cheers to that. All right. One sec. Now, let's dive into this. So Intel was talking about some very, very near upcoming launches of hardware this week at Innovation. Obviously, Raptor Lake has been huge news with the upcoming release of that. They went over some more of the technical details and some of the final specifications of Raptor Lake. Ian's got one on a keychain now.
No, this isn't one.
Oh, what'd you get?
This I got from. So I went to Israel a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, that's your Israel trip. Okay, yeah.
But the Panasonic won't focus. But what they did is they took an Alder Lake chip,
nice.
And they put a hole through it.
Mm-hmm. As I found out, as I found out this week, when CPUs are dropped or get holes in them, they tend to not work anymore. So I wouldn't try to socket that one in. Anyway, so while there was some news, and some of the bigger news being that the Intel Alchemist A770 finally has a launch date and a price. Raptor Lake got finalized specs and some preliminary pricing in bin quantities, and that was kind of released. We know that they're pushing upwards to, you know, that 5.7 to 6 gigahertz boost clock out of the box. And so it was like, yeah, it's much of the same news that we've heard to this point, and nothing tremendously exciting or unexpected.
I'll add to that the A770 release date just happens to be the same day as the 4090. Make of that what you will. But
I'm shocked. Shocked, really.
Intel at the 329 price point is going essentially against the 3060 in trying to beat it in performance per dollar. Somewhere around 35 to 50% better performance per dollar, I think they're saying.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that, but they've put out a lot of numbers. I think the Intel is doing videos about that of their own volition, and I believe there'll be another couple between now and launch. So it's worth waiting for those, because apparently they have some more benchmark numbers to show. Yeah,
and Intel, obviously, they spent some time up at Linus, up at LTT. They did some walkthrough on some of the A380 and A770 performance, and one of the things that they were trying to do one of the things that they were trying to do between that time and launch is dial in on some of the older APIs, so your DirectX 11 and DirectX 10 titles, Vulkan compatibility, that kind of thing. So we're hoping to see some vastly better performance than what Linus demonstrated, although in DirectX 12, they were highly competitive at that mid-tier graphics range. So definitely interested to get my hands on that. So stay tuned to the channel. I have been in talks with them about some reviews on that. So again, kind of just run of the mill, you know, yeah, it's exciting that we have another GPU partner finally entering the market and getting some decent performance, but you know, that's a wrap. That's a show, you know, good. Now there was one booth that you kind of didn't visit, and maybe it's because you've been on two fab tours in the last 12 months with Intel. Like we've seen all the wafers that there are, to even some that we probably couldn't talk about. We've seen a lot of wafers over the last year, you and I. Intel was showing off a finished wafer of their Raptor Lake desktop chips, or at least that's what the booth said. Ian, can you walk us through what was actually there?
So part of innovation is they have a show floor, and on the show floor they have a lot of Intel stuff and a lot of partner stuff. Areas to do with software and hardware, and showing, you know, they had lots of, say, CXL and DDR5 and all the AI software. And of course, if you're going to talk about, if Pat Gelsinger is going to talk about Raptor Lake in the keynote, there's going to be a little Raptor Lake session showing off the gaming performance. The booth specifically there had a desktop PC, you know, full RGB flashy lights, and they were showing off a game and basically showing how the fact that you now have more E-cores, and there's a new version of Thread Director that uses the E-cores better. And they were showing that off in a gaming workload. It just so happened to be that there was a wafer there, right?
Hey, we need an extra prop piece, right?
But it felt like it was after the facts of the booth had been put together, right? It just so happened that about 15 feet away, they had the Intel Foundry Services booth, which is where they design chips for other people. And they had multiple wafers there. They had Intel 7. They were showing off the Intel 4 one that they've already showed off. And for some reason, they also had a Bay Trail wafer for whatever reason. And nobody was allowed to take photos of those wafers. And for that, you have to blame Dylan Patel over at Semi Analysis, because in the last Intel event, he got some super close-up shots, and then a few people online, went, well, that's the core, that's the L2 cache, that's, all the little different bits of the core, and they said, that's too close, you now need to stand at least 3 feet away before you take pictures, and don't use Zoom. At the Raptor Lake booth, Intel 13th Gen, the official name, again, there was a wafer that just seems to be there. It wasn't like in a stand, it didn't have a little sign saying Raptor Lake wafer, it was just there, on the table next to the keyboard showing the game, and a couple of people at the booth that were managing the booth were like, do you want to have a look at Raptor Lake? And they went, that's a Raptor Lake wafer. And so it's literally 5 minutes to 7 in the evening. This is the show floor closes at 7. And I've stood nearby for a while because I was speaking to people. I saw Gordon Ung from PC World go by. I saw Dave Altavia from Hot Hardware go by. I saw Anshul Sag from Morehead Insights go by. And I saw them looking at the wafer. And I said, "Oh, it's Raptor Lake wafer. I saw that in Israel." Well, yeah. And then it just so happens that Paul Alcorn from Tom's Hardware was there, and we got speaking, and as you do when you're speaking to people, you slowly migrate somewhere, and it just so happened that we ended up there and looking at the wafer, and the person at the booth said, "Oh yeah, we've got a Raptor Lake wafer." Now, I said we saw one in Israel. The one we saw at Israel didn't have the diffraction pattern you normally see in a wafer. Usually, a wafer is like a rainbow. Because you have lots of metal interconnects it's multiple. It's like a dozen metal layers, and the different lines go everywhere, and that causes light diffraction, and you get a rainbow, right, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's typically what people think of when they think of a wafer, but it's a multi-layer, multi-stage process. That's and as you probably saw in our tour video, where Ian and I went in the bunny suits and went through all those cartridges that were flying through the air. Those are all different stages of the assembly and layering process, and they add them atoms at a time. But over the course of 3, 4, 5, 6 months, sometimes for different fab processes. So what you saw in Israel was a matte finished one that had some of the copper adhered, but didn't have many of the other substrates and things like that. Yeah, right,
correct. So the fact that this one, it had that it had the diffraction rainbow effect. Obviously different. Obviously news. Had a look. Paul's there with his smartphone. Click, 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 click picture. Uh-huh. I look over and go, that's not Raptor Lake, that's Ice Lake. And Paul goes, huh? And the person at the booth goes, no.
Huh?
That's Raptor.
Yeah.
And
of course it's Raptor.
I went, no, that's Ice. And Paul went, you're right. And the guy at the booth goes, no, it's Raptor. And I turned around and I said, I bet money that's not Raptor. Literally stake my rep, because when right?
Right.
To me, seeing the difference between a server chip and a desktop chip on a wafer is like the difference between seeing a small Citroen 2CV versus a Hummer on the road, right? You can spot the difference a mile off. If you
it's someone with perfect pitch, and some people go, hey, what's that note? That's a G. Oh my God, I just know what a G is. Like,
yeah, especially an OG. I definitely know what an OG is.
Right. No, that's when you see
and then Paul agreed with me, and the guy at the booth. There were two guys, and they were looking weird. And the reason why I said Ice Lake, right, is if you're familiar with the Xeon silicon, it's a mesh of cores. It's in a 2D array. You have cores in some of the nodes in the mesh. In other nodes in the mesh, you have memory controllers and PCIe and UPI and accelerators and what have you. And Ice Lake goes up to 40 cores. You have the two main die are 28 core and 40 core. And you can tell they're 28 or 40 because you can count the repeating units. I looked over and I saw it's a mesh. So I instantly thought Ice Lake, because why would they put anything else on the show floor that had a mesh?
Right.
And then I counted the cores, because obviously they're distinct and repeated units, like I just said. And there were 34 of them. And you think there is no silicon with 34 cores that we know of, and this is 34 P cores.
Right.
So just to clarify, there's no E cores in Enterprise yet. 2025 45 with Sierra Forest. That's when we talk about that stuff. Now, not right now.
And again, for clarification, with Raptor Lake, their largest SKU, which is the 13900K, is an 8P core, 16 efficiency core. So it's a 24 core, 32 thread unit with a very different physical architecture. It's a physically different size die. It's more of a rectangular die, and it's a different interconnect between those cores. They are completely different from one another. Similar process, both 10 nanometer, but completely different from the Ice Lake, which is a mesh-based architecture, and again, very distinct if you know what you're looking at.
So with the Raptor Lake architecture, like you say, 8 P cores, but then the E cores are split into groups of 4, roughly the same size of a P core. So you'd have 8 plus 4, so you'd expect to see 12 segments. It's in a ring, it's not a mesh, but it's 12 segments. Right. Whereas in this new die, I saw 34 segments. That were distinctly the same and different from, say, the interconnect and the UPI and the PCIe.
And we actually have a picture, so... Here's the cell phone picture from Tom's Hardware, so credit Paul Alcorn on this one. But you can see all the individual components on this die. You can count 34 individual little squares. So I'm going to take my mouse and very carefully square this off.
Yeah. So where Jess, you moving his mouse, you see 5 by 5 in the center.
So 5 and 5.
And then just above that you have 3.
3 right here.
Split. And then on the other side of the die you have 3.
Yep.
Because the ones where it's missing in that 5 are probably the memory controllers, because that's how Ice Lake was. Right. But then just on the left-hand edge, as we look at it, there are also another 3, which seem completely separate from everything else. And when I did the video with Paul, I said, what the F are they meant to be? Because they're at least 2 mesh stops away from everything else.
Right. And when we're talking mesh stops, we're literally talking speed of light, speed of electricity, efficiency, and latency between interconnects on a chip. So the 3 off to the side are a little confusing, and I'm sure we'll get that eventually. But... like we know with Ice Lake and even before it with Cascade Lake, we know that they have 28 and 32 core SKUs in those. We've also seen those dies, and this is also not one of those dies. Different
layout. And so we're like, what the F is this? My initial thought is if you know Intel Xeon roadmap, the next one after Ice Lake is, oh my god, it's so late. I've forgotten. Sapphire Rapids. Sorry, there we go. SPR.
Rapids,
I had SPR in mind. So Sapphire Rapids. Typically, Intel does a low core count, a mid core count, and a high core count. All we've seen to date is the high core count. That's the 4 chiplets, 1,600 square millimeters of silicon. It's massive. So that's the Skylake, the 28 core one, isn't it?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah,
yes.
But Sapphire Rapids, we know the big one has 4 chiplets. We don't know the size of the middle one or the small one. So my instant thought was, well, okay, if the top end Sapphire Rapids is, I think, let's say 56 cores, then 34 would be a good mid-range number.
Right.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But then we flipped the person at the booth, because he still didn't believe what we were saying, flips the wafer over. And there was a sticker on the back. Do you have the picture of this?
Let me see if it's in his article. There it is. Okay. I do have that. There we go. Ready for this? Raptor Lake. So L wafer, RPL S34C. Raptor Lake S34 core.
And so this sticker isn't, so the wafer was on top of a wafer carrier. There's a Perspex wafer carrier. That sticker is not on the wafer carrier. It's on the bottom of the wafer. These wafers, every time there's a production run, 2 or 3 wafers at taken off the production run to use as marketing materials to show off to customers, what have you. Right. They don't re-enter, so you can get fingerprints on them. You can play frisbee with them.
You can chew on them if you want. Yeah.
So this sticker's on the bottom of the wafer and what have you.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it says Raptor Lake S. S, for the longest time in Intel speak, means desktop consumer.
Right.
It has never meant anything else. There were some S CPUs back in the day that were meant to be reduced power between the T and the regular,
there was T and L and a couple other nomenclatures that but we're talking all the way back in like, you know, Ivy Bridge and Haswell kind of days, right?
There were L on the server side, no L on the consumer side. I think that was S and T.
S and T, right?
P.
Right.
Yeah, there was even a couple of P's I have them at home.
Oh, nice.
However, so Raptor Lake S desktop 34 core, but this is a massive die. Desktop is dual channel and 16 PCIe lanes, and so did they mean to say WS? What does WS stand for, Jeff?
That would be a workstation or workstation server.
Workstation. And it just so happened that earlier that day I met the person in Intel in charge of desktop and workstation.
Right. Now, that's another thing is Intel, as large of a company as they are extremely organized and lockstep, rank and file, top to bottom in their organization. Every single piece of the Intel organization has very specific things that they work on, that they cover, that they have a dozen different PR teams, and getting in, like, I have people that I talk to within the consumer desktop PR team. It is a completely different PR team from the server team, from the networking team, from the graphics team, they don't even know each other. It's a separate company as far as the tree is involved. Until recently.
That's technically changed. It is a pyramidal organization, and there are some delineations. You eventually go high enough up the chain, you meet the person in charge of them all.
Right.
So it is what it is. So now we're thinking. So now we've shown even the bottom says Raptor Lake, and the people at the booth were still really confused.
Right.
What I think has happened, right, when they do these booths for these massive events, everything has to get passed, it has to be approved to be shown, right? It's very strict in what they do. Because this wafer didn't have a spot in the booth dedicated to it, it just was there. What I think has happened is someone at the headquarters in Santa Clara here, the Robert Noyce building, R&B, has thought, right, we need to show a Raptor Lake wafer at the booth. And he's just gone to his desk and seen a wafer that says Raptor Lake S, picked it up, taken it to show floor, said to the people at the booth, show this off, it's Raptor Lake. And they've gone, okay.
Cool, it's Raptor Lake. I was told it says Raptor Lake right on the back. But the biggest Raptor Lake core die.
Well, so this is the thing, right? That wafer had been at the booth all day. It was 7 p.m. when we saw it, 5 to 7.
Mm-hmm.
It had been through all the press and analysts who decided to go by the event, and also all the Intel partners and developers. And I don't expect a developer to be able to identify hardware in the same way that the journalists should do.
Right.
But Gordon from PC World, Dave from Hot Hardware, Anshul from Moorhead, they'd already seen it. Even Paul from Tom's Hardware, who is arguably one of the best CPU reviewers in the market now. Absolutely. That I've buggered off.
Yeah.
Even
now that you're on Intel's payroll
at first. Yeah, and AMD's and everybody else's.
Yeah.
I have to put that qualifier in, otherwise people will start shill. So
yeah.
Right. So, and the fact that I pointed that, so I would have expected Paul to have taken the photos and then 2 or 3 days later gone through them and then realized what he was looking at. It wasn't until I said that's not Raptor Lake, or that's Ice Lake, even though I was wrong in saying Ice Lake to begin with.
But you were as accurate as you possibly could be for a tech that had no announcement, this isn't even on any roadmap that we've ever seen as far as we
expect something like this because workstation is usually derived from the server part. If they were doing a workstation SKU, that's what Skylake X was, and that's Haswell and Broadwell E and whatever.
Right.
So the thing is, this says Raptor Lake S, which means it has Raptor Lake cores. The Raptor Lake P cores are called Raptor Cove. Alder Lake has Golden Cove cores. Right, so the update to Golden Cove is Raptor Cove. The fact that they've called it Raptor Cove and Raptor Lake makes it very easy. Thank you, Intel, for simplifying that for us. Finally, it's taken you a while, but I'm glad you took my advice on board.
Yes.
Great. So
yeah, please unify your code names across the stack for one product line.
Yes. So if there was to be a workstation version of Sapphire Rapids uses the Golden Cove Alder Lake cores. These are not Alder Lake. These are not Golden Cove. These are Raptor Cove. Right. Raptor Cove are the cores to be used in Emerald Rapids, which is a generation after Sapphire Rapids. Right. So if this is anything, this is the mid-core, or what they call the high core, because they have low core, high core, extreme core. Because they used to just have low core and high core. They don't have low core, high core, and extreme core. Yeah. This would be the Emerald Rapids high core count silicon, or the workstation variant of. The fact that it says S rather than any of the enterprise
WS or X, right?
Well, no. So WS and X are still kind of consumer prosumer. The fact that it's not 8580 type.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So makes me consider that this is essentially Emerald Rapids workstation silicon. On the show floor, being presented to people as Raptor Lake silicon.
I guess kind of it is Raptor Cove silicon, but
so people ask me, and even Intel AMD, they ask the press, do you want to go back to in-person events? And a large majority of them, anywhere from 50 to 80%, say we're fine with remote events. Briefings on calls, that's the Q&A, and most of the press don't even ask Q in the Q&A. I'm always the one that bitches at everyone to ask questions because otherwise I'm the only one. And Paul and I said on the video that we did together, which I'm sure you've linked below, and it's well worth a watch.
I didn't because I forgot, but it will be linked. So
that was immediately after we found it, the raw emotion about an hour later. You're now experiencing the day later emotions. So yeah, this is why we come to events. If you're a YouTuber or an influencer, when you want to go to an event, you need to plan your schedule. It's like, okay, I'm going to Taiwan for Computex. I'm going to be there for 8 days. I need to film 6 videos. I've scripted 5 of them in advance. I'll do another one on the plane. And that's going to be my content. I shouldn't expect to have anything that I never saw. If you're written press, you go to an event and you say, well, I'll probably write.
Uh-oh. Oh no, did we lose him? He was fading for a minute. I hope we will get him back. But yeah, I will say, kind of going on what... oh, are you there? I don't have your audio. I don't have your audio. Oh, there you are.
How about now? Yeah,
there you are. All right.
That's because my camera ran out of battery.
Yeah, I figured it was coming. All right. Yeah, and I need to rejigger your view here, so... Bear with me.
when an influencer goes to an event like Computex, they have a dedicated amount of videos that they prepare in advance. Written journalist says, I will definitely write these 3 pieces based on the keynotes and whatever, and anything else that comes along. Mm-hmm. This is the reason I go to events. It's because of the 50% of the time is spent in corridors, speaking to engineers, finding out about the stuff that you wouldn't otherwise get if you hadn't have been there. I mean, I've spoken to other big YouTubers. I've said, with unlimited time and resources, would you want to go to events and get to know the company and know the engineers? And they've said no, because they don't want to be lied to or be fed propaganda. And I'm like, the reason why I'm able to understand how some of these architectures work in the purest sense is because I've sat down with an engineer and they've talked me through how it works.
And see, I'm the exact. I'm on board with you for this one, 100%, because I've gone to events before. Like, I've done CES, and I've gone to CES with the plan of being that big YouTuber and like, I'm gonna do 7 videos in 4 days, and we're just gonna like blitz this thing. And then I produce 3 videos, but then the entire time I'm spent with Gigabyte or MSI, and they're like, hey, can I show you something? And you walk behind the booth and you talk for like an hour and a half with an engineer or a rep who is not trying to just blow smoke up your ass, but is like, I'm genuinely excited about this new platform. This is going to be super cool. I'm looking forward to the launch. Like, we're doing some really neat things. And it's not just RGB. It's like and I'm like, dude, that's cool. I can't produce a video on that, but I love those conversations. And you can't do that on a Zoom call. You can't do that in a remote session with chat for a Q&A. It's the getting down you can't do that if you're not over. You have to sit down and you have to have that little bit of back and forth. And that's where you get the information for things like this.
And for me, this is right. So we know scoops happen, right? We know exclusives happen. We know these random rare events, they happen once a year. Or once or twice a year, and you're lucky if it happens to you. The minute we found this, the minute we published it, the minute we recorded the video, me and Paul, we were walking back, and Paul's bit was done. I just had to edit it, and I had issues with my video editor with GPU transcoding. That's another story. But we bumped into Patrick Kennedy from Serve the Home. You know Patrick.
Oh yeah.
And he told me the next morning, when you two came by us to speak to us about what you'd just done, you were like 2 giddy schoolgirls who had just something had happened in school, and it was the talk of gossip. And this is the essence of living in this industry, finding those little pieces and going, yeah.
I couldn't agree more with that, and I've spent a bit of time with Patrick. I actually had dinner with him not 2 or 3 months ago, that was a lot of fun. But I got that same energy just watching your video with Paul on that, just like because these kinds of like unintended oops things, and we're not just talking about Sapphire Rapids, which I don't know if I can talk anything at all about visual whatever, but the fact that you found a die that is the generation after that is, and just so people know how big this story is, Raptor Lake, their 13900K is 8 P cores and 16 E cores. This is 34 P cores. No efficiency. It doesn't need it. Screw your efficiency. I want raw speed. That's what this CPU is about. And while we can't really dig into like, oh, that's the PCI Express lanes, there's going to be 256 of those or whatever else, we can make some very educated guesses about what this silicon is, and we can base that around memory channels, where you said this is either a 4 or an 8 channel memory controller on this chip. There's upwards of 34 cores, which would probably indicate either a 28 or a 32 core finalized die to account for binning or any other irregularities, which those have been popular SKUs with Cascade Lake and Ice Lake. So that core count kind of makes sense. But the fact that it's literally 2 or 3 generations more advanced than what we're seeing with Cascade Lake, that's impressive and very, very interesting and reassuring for the future, because this is a market that Intel has not been in for, 5 years now, almost? High-end desktop?
And this could be A0 silicon. This could be B0 silicon. It could be ES1, ES2. It's definitely not a QS.
Right.
At least it exists, right?
They went through the trouble of making it.
You remember when we went on the Fab Tour?
Uh-huh.
Yes. You remember when we went on the Fab Tour and we saw a wafer and we weren't allowed to, at the time, to say what we saw?
Right. I wasn't sure if we could say what we saw.
Now.
Right.
Given what I've seen on the show floor today, I can say we saw Sapphire Rapids being made.
Yes. Yeah, we were walking. Right. We were walking by a verification station, which had a microscope and had an engineer sitting there working on it. And we kind of stopped and we were watching the machine work. It would like grab a wafer out and then it would scan 3 or 4 of the little die cuts on it. And Ian looks at that and he kind of leans in and he goes, "Do you see that?" I went, "Yeah, I do." And he goes, "Sapphire Rapids." I went, "I know." and it was that kind of excitement. And
because well, it's we recognized where the cores were in the mesh.
Right.
Same thing.
Yeah, it was knowing that's definitely not Alder Lake. Like we are not, and we're not looking at Ice Lake, dies either. We're looking at something that is a little bit bigger, a little bit broader. As you said, this is probably a 400 mil square die. I mean, this is not a small piece of silicon that they're putting onto.
So Sky Juice at Angstronomics, he's taken our pictures. He's done, what you can do in Photoshop and aspect ratio adjusted it and what have you.
Yeah.
Also with better photos from the hardware guys and from Anshul, and he's actually worked out this is more closer to 600 square mil, just by how many dies are on the wafer. And to be fair, that's what I would do if I bothered to actually take a full wafer shot, right?
Right.
Jeff, just one double check that your microphone's not being picked up double. People are saying that you're like a Dalek.
Interesting. I don't think it is. There's something coming from your mic. Ian sounds good on his side.
You're coming through Zoom fine.
Okay. Oh, I know what it is. God, I hope the entire show hasn't been like that. All right, cool. Yeah.
No, just since my camera dropped.
Okay, just when your camera dropped? Well, that's even weirder because... Yeah. Oh, I know what it probably was. I think one of my hotkeys unmuted my HDMI stream. Normally, my HDMI stream doesn't have audio on it, so it's not a big deal. But right before the stream, my camera stopped working, so I had to swap the camera out. So, yeah, I think when I was alt-tabbing and moving away, like, oh, black screen, let's fix this, I think I unmuted that channel. Okay, people are saying I'm normal now. All right.
Yeah, sounds good. So
cool.
So with that story, I think we should do the world exclusive.
Yes.
On your stream.
Yes, that would be.
I literally prompted you 30 minutes before we started. Let's do this.
So what's really funny is Rhett and I were actually going to do an in-person show for the first time in like 4 months again, and so Rhett's sitting here, and Ian goes, "Oh, by the way, can I be on the show?" And I went, "Rhett, you're getting paid anyway. Go home, drink a beer. You're good." So yes, let me. See, you sent that to me in Discord, so let me pull that.
No.
Oh.
I kind of want to weave a narrative.
Okay. Go ahead and
paint a picture.
Tell you what, I will pull up the image and get that prompted and ready to go. Go ahead and weave your narrative, and you you let me know when you want to reveal.
Okay, so. The journey of Intel's 10 nanometer has been long and arduous. Jeff, do you remember the name of the first generation of Intel's 10 nanometer product?
Oh, gosh. Their first one was slated to be a mobile chip, and it was kind of, gosh, that was 2020 when I think they unveiled that. Might have even been 2009, like late 2019. I'm forgetting the actual code name. I do know it was only like a 15-watt part.
So
that's all they could muster out of it.
So the first one that went to major retail was Ice Lake Mobile,
right,
in late 2018, I believe. However, they did state in 2017 they were shipping 10 nanometer for revenue. What they were talking about was a part called Cannon Lake.
Oh, that's
as you
right.
say,
yes.
15 watts, 2 cores.
Mm-hmm.
Integrated graphics didn't work, so you had to use a GPU. I was the first person to review this because I managed to find Lenovo was selling the CPUs in a education-based, for like a second grade class education-based laptop.
Yeah.
That Intel had just said, sell these CPUs so we can say they're shipping for revenue. I understand that there were 100,000 made and 10 vendors got 10,000 each and were basically told to sell these, and Intel essentially subsidized it. That's how I understand it.
Yeah, it was based on their 8th gen fab, but shrunk down to 10 nanometer from the 14. So yeah.
Well, so it had its own name. I can't remember what the code name was for it.
Right.
But I picked this laptop up. I ended up paying something like $600 because I had to find a friend in China to accept it, ship it. I had to pay import taxes. Mm-hmm. It took 2 months. It was an ordeal. I was the first person to review it, and then subsequently Austin Evans also reviewed it somehow, because Intel eventually sold it in NUC form.
Yes.
I have been after one of these NUCs for a while, specifically the 8GB version, because it's soldered DRAM down. The laptop was like 4 soldered plus SODIMM, and that was just a pain because there was thermal limits. So I wanted a NUC, and I've been after one for a few years. I finally found one on eBay, only shipped to the US. So I knew somebody who was going to Innovation. I said, "Can you take delivery?" And that's what this is. Let me see if I can get it on actually center camera.
So you've got that.
So this is,
there you go.
This is the Core i3 8121U dual core NUC, new in box. It's basically had it in an old storeroom.
Denver called it in my chat. i3 8121U.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
Yeah. So that is the Intel's first 10 nanometer product that was named and technically did go to customers, and it went in a NUC. So there was some scale, and you can buy the 4GB version today. Compared to the equivalent dual-core Kaby Lake, it's not worth the silicon it's printed on.
Right.
Because it uses a Radeon 540, and so the i3-8130U is the Kaby Lake U version.
Yeah.
That is Intel's first 10 nanometer product. Now, Intel's renamed 10 to 7, and
Intel 7 process built on 10 nanometer.
Right. So this NUC, I call it. It was the Intel's 10 minus process node. Because
have you talked to them about their node naming too? Like, oh, we can't do 7 yet, so we'll name it Intel 7 based on 10 nanometer.
There's a story. Yeah.
Can you say it on air? Or should we?
It probably requires its own segment.
Okay.
So going through all of Intel's 10 nanometer class processors, we have we have Cannon Lake, we have Ice Lake, we have Tiger Lake. What was after? Was there something after Tiger Lake, or was that just Alder Lake?
Tiger Lake, then Alder Lake. Right. Yeah, Tiger Lake was 11th.
And then we've got Alder Lake, and we know Raptor Lake's coming. We've just discussed Raptor Lake. And And then on the enterprise side, the first 10 nanometer product was Ice Lake, because that was delayed. So it went Skylake, Cascade, Cooper, Ice, and then the next one being Sapphire Rapids, Intel's technically most advanced 10 nanometer class processor.
Not quite as advanced as the other chip we talked about, but pretty darn. Yes.
Is it? So you can't see this. This is a wooden box that says Intel Xeon. If I open it up, and because now my DSLR is no longer on the show, and I take what is inside it out, and it's going to fall down because this is a plugger. Let's put it this way. Really heavy. It probably weighs the best part of a couple of pounds. Okay, there we go. I have here in my hand the Intel. This is probably where you put up the picture because I can't see it.
Yep, exactly.
This is the Intel Xeon 4th generation Intel scalable Sapphire Rapids processor in Lucite. World exclusive. Only a handful of people at the show got these. I pinged them. None of them have opened their boxes yet. So I've sent this photo on. It's got hex screws. It's got these hex screws to keep Lucite on. I didn't bring my screwdriver with me. I have held the chip because a few chips have been floating about, at least engineering samples. This likely is a non-working sample.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have a paperweight with Sapphire Rapids CPU.
Woohoo! So they exist now. We can finally say, yeah, we saw Sapphire Rapids in wafer form back in December when Ian and I were at the Hillsborough campus in Oregon. So, but fourth gen scalable.
That was wafer. Yeah. This is now chip.
Yep.
And if you've not seen an LGA 4677 chip before,
they are interesting. They are an interesting.
Maybe.
Yeah. So I think.
I don't know if my camera.
Yeah, here. There we go. Yeah, they are. They're very different. They're very distinct sockets with those two hollow sections in the center and then split across the middle. I have seen a couple pictures of motherboards floating around, although I don't think I can post either of those either. But they are wild looking sockets. That is for sure.
So there has been a disclosure today on Sapphire Rapids. I need to bring up what my embargo is, just so I definitely make sure I don't say anything I shouldn't.
I don't have an embargo on it, so you could DM me and we'll no.
I'm pretty sure that's cool to breaking my embargo. Yeah. So it's gone 4 p.m. Pacific.
Okay.
So what I can say is that I can say that I need to. This embargo is weird because there's actually a couple of different.
So one of the multi-stage ones. You can talk about LGA, and then you can talk about core count, then you can talk about cache, and then you can yeah. Right.
So today the reason why I have this is I participated in a VIP experience of Sapphire Rapids where they demonstrated Intel's accelerators. Now, when we think of a processor core, it's stuff that does math, and then we added graphics to the core, and the graphics was an accelerator that did graphics, and then we had decode and encode accelerators that encoded and decoded video. Mm-hmm. And Apple does a lot of marketing on this. Intel and then like AVX512 was essentially a kind of an accelerator, and now right. Intel has stated that Sapphire Rapids now has 4 accelerators. We have Intel QAT, which you may be familiar with. Quick Assist technology. They've had it for a couple of years, and it's to help accelerate networking and compression. Basically, you're offloading your workload from your core into a dedicated accelerator. Because if you're in the cloud and you sell cores, if you can, rather than spend 5 cores dealing with network traffic, if you can offload that, then it's another 5 cores you can sell.
Right, exactly.
Intel AMX, which is their advanced matrix extensions, which is the next evolution of AVX512. Intel DSA, which is another accelerator to help dealing with NVMe using SPDK. DSA something accelerator.
Direct storage acceleration, I think. It's something like that.
I don't think it's that, but it's something like that.
Yeah.
And then there's IAA, which is in-memory and analytics, which is all to do with optimizing databases, multiple accelerators. And they demonstrated workloads comparing 64 dual socket, 64 core Milan versus 60 core Sapphire Rapids.
And your eyes just got really big.
So yeah, this means that they're showcasing these accelerators. So this means that we previously thought. So again, let's make this kind of an exclusive, even though the embargo lifted 3 hours ago. Sapphire Rapids, we previously thought went up to 56 cores. It will now go up to 60.
Nice little game.
This probably has dead silicon, not cores. But I may take it for a munch later. Yeah. There were some things that I had to double check that I definitely made sure I didn't mention.
That you're allowed to, yeah.
So I can't. All I can say is the data that was compared, and there are graphs that are now public showing 60 core versus 64 core. Nothing about any other details about the processor aside from the accelerators. A, they didn't tell me a lot of it, and B, anything that they did tell that I haven't just said on stream is under embargo until a later date, which is again under embargo.
Yep.
The date of the embargo is under embargo. I hope Jeff understands.
I get that. I hate not even being able to, like, some embargoes, you can't even acknowledge a product's existence until a certain date. It's like, oh yes, no, I heard Intel was making something. Of course they're making something. Like, don't.
I had that. So when I first started writing in this industry, I was just doing the motherboards. And I remember one day thinking, oh, Intel just released a new processor family? Why didn't... And then that changed with the smartphone industry. The smartphone industry used to pre-announce their phones, especially Apple, and then Samsung did as well, and Huawei and a few of the others, decided to say, we're launching this product. It will be on shelves in a month. Review units will go out in a week. Reviews will go live in 3 weeks. Within 2 weeks, you can pre-order in 3 weeks, and they will ship in 4 weeks.
Right.
And I remember at the time when I turned from motherboard editor to CPU editor and just said, nobody knows these are coming out until they get on the shelves publicly.
Right.
You need to have a marketing scheme in place where you can, quote unquote, build a hype train, which the GPU industry was used to doing as well.
Right.
Especially ATI, right?
Oh, yes.
There was one person in ATI responsible for most of that. He's just, and I do remember 9 a.m. in Macau with samosas in hands talking about Polaris.
I wasn't quite in the industry at that point. I was still over on the IT side of things, but yeah, no, there's there are some aspects of this industry that do a really good job with laying out the timeline for when products should be announced, and then announcing said products, and then allowing for a review cycle, and then, tearing off things. I will say, I really dislike, like we just talked about, the tiered embargoes of, like, you can only release certain specs on certain days. It's like, who is that benefiting? That, I guarantee your competitors already pretty much know what your roadmaps are based on public roadmaps that you've disclosed to investor meetings and everything else. Like, you're not gonna...
It kind of doesn't matter, because all the product information, all the product, the design had to have happened last year anyway.
Right.
So whatever your product is, maybe tweak like 100 megahertz here or there, 5.7 versus 5.8 gigahertz.
But you went into production 9 months ago.
Yeah. The final silicon at least 3 months ago, if not 6.
Right.
And okay, maybe the MSRP changes by a couple of $100 based on whatever leather jacket and how tight it is you're wearing that day.
How many spatulas are in the back counter? Like, yeah. But there are some aspects this industry gets really right. I don't like the fact that reviews are embargoed until the retail launch of products. That is one of the aspects of this industry that drives me the most nuts, is because maybe not Ian anymore, Mr. Analyst, but over here still on the 100% review cycle of things. My job is to help you as a consumer make an informed decision, and even more so because I also sit in the enterprise and the server space. There's a good number of my viewers who are decision makers for some multi-million-dollar corporations and partners and things like that, and it's my job to provide you the most up-to-date information as possible and allow you time to make those decisions. And if I can't even talk about the existence of a product or the final specifications of a product within 2 weeks of launch, that product isn't going to exist for that decision maker because they don't have all the data to figure out whether or not it would work in their environment.
Well, you do have one recommendation, and that's not to buy an old HP workstation and a CPU that's not on the roadmap.
Do not buy an HP Z6 and a Xeon that never technically existed outside of an Amazon data center.
Shall we do the sponsors?
Yes, we should do the sponsors and the super chats. So, today's video, as always, is brought to you by Linode. And if I can find my Linode little button there it is. There's Linode. If you've ever needed to host your own servers, whether it be for home or business, but don't have the resources to invest into hardware, power, cooling, time, or even space, why not let Linode host them for you? If it runs on Linux, it'll run on Linode. That includes most of the software from tutorials you've seen on my channel, like how to run your own ad-blocking recursive DNS servers, VPN gateways, your own cloud-based Plex servers, and more. With shared CPU plans starting at as little as $5 per month and scaling up to as high as you need to go, you'll be able to find a hosting plan that fits your needs. Even if you do host your own servers, you can use Linode to keep a backup off-site, because remember, RAID is not a backup. Linode also recently announced they were the first alternative cloud provider to have NVMe block storage available to all customers. Last year, they began rolling out NVMe drives to all 11 of their global data centers. Best of all, storage rates remained at the same low price they always had been. Visit linode.com/craftcomputing and get a $100 60-day credit just for signing up for a new account. That's linode.com/craftcomputing, and again, a huge thanks to Linode for sponsoring today's episode. And I'm sorry I couldn't do the accent that you do in your reads, but when you do it, it's funny. When I do it,
here.
Aw, shucks. Visit linode.com.
If you want an independent cloud service provider that offers NVMe block storage, then go visit Linode today at linode.com/craftcomputing.
There you go.
They're sponsoring your show, not mine this time. So
you know what? Visit
link, not mine.
Visit linode.com/techpotato. I mean, that link is still valid. They both work.
If you've never considered cloud services before, just visit the website and at least learn what they do. You'll be a richer person for what happens in this industry just by learning about the things people need.
That is also an excellent point.
Knowledge is free.
Yeah. Learning what cloud services are selling now, because they're selling products that people are buying. It's a weird paradigm, I know, but they don't sell things that people aren't consuming.
Processor as a service.
Yes, processor as a service, compute time as a service. I mean, that's kind of the way the industry has been going for the last half decade and more.
SaaS as a service. Sorry, bad joke. Bad joke.
Too far, Ian. Too far.
Yeah, and now I've gone all dark. Yeah. So, the reason I brought it up is because last time we did a stream together, we went 2.5 hours in and forgot to do the sponsors, and I noticed we're an hour in, so we should do them.
Yes, I do appreciate you keeping track of time. Also, I do have some super chats to get to. Don't worry, I didn't forget about you, and I did see you all, but far be it from me to interrupt a doctor. So. Tech Geek sends over $50. Thank you very much, sir. Just got home from work, catching up. Evening, gents. And he's been working on getting a new job lately and has been keeping us all abreast of that situation. Talked to the boss, finalized pay rate, and today he walked out with a new schedule and is the proud owner of a master key. So, freaking awesome. Tech Geek, hope that's going well for you. Kren sends over his customary 5 Aussie bucks, which we gladly accept around here. G'day, mates. Missed the last show as I was driving around 800 kilos, but he's not this time, so he is catching the show live. And Ryan sends over $2 and says, "We finally hit 10 nanometer. Let's make a dual core." That was, I remember watching that announcement live and going like, we're finally bringing 10 nanometer to market, and by finally, remember, 10 nanometer was supposed to hit, what was it, 2015 was the original roadmap for 10 nanometer to launch, maybe even 2014, because it was supposed to be like Ivy Bridge, and then TikTok, you got your Haswell, and then we were supposed to drop a fab, and they just never did. And so when we watched the announcement in late 2018, 2019 of like, we're finally bringing 10 nanometer to market. And then it's like, we're finally going to get like that super high performance boost we were looking for and efficiency. And we're going to be, 105 watts and 8 cores. And it's like, we have a 7 watt and a 15 watt mobile core, dual core CPU that you will all enjoy. And I went, okay.
So this is kind of part of perhaps a dedicated video about how process nodes work. But to your question, in 2010, Intel said that 11 nanometer would be coming in 2015.
Yes.
However, EUV was expected to come at the 180 nanometer. EUV is 20 years late. Put that into perspective.
Okay, that's fair.
Welcome to Moore's Law, everybody.
Yeah. Moore's Law. We found sometimes it scales and sometimes it doesn't.
I will say, with all these super chats, you can now finally pay to ship my toiletry bag back to me.
I can. I wish I had saved that joke for later in the show. So I zinged Ian earlier because he was looking for a TRRS cable for his audio for his DSLR, and I said, "Is it in your toiletry bag?" Because that's still on my counter upstairs from when he was over back in December. So.
Yeah. Well, that is because we did leave your place at 5 in
the
morning, if I remember correctly, or something stupid, and I just forgot to pick things up.
It was, as we say in these parts, the ass crack of dawn. And
we did have to go. We did have to go buy, and I had to go buy some toiletries because
I ran to Rite Aid to buy deodorant for Ian. like We crossed some friendship barriers that day, I feel.
No, razors.
Oh, razor. That's right. Yeah.
You went to buy razors while I jumped in the shower, and then on the way to the Fab tour, I realized I didn't have deodorant, and I just had to have something.
Yeah.
And so we stopped on the way to Intel Fab to get some roll on.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, we're good friends now. We're well acquainted with each other.
I would say you have to get to supercomputing in November, but I'm not going to be there. So
yeah, I'm not either. I've got another event that I'm attending in November. So that same weekend, actually. So as do you. You're not going to be in Texas.
No, I'm going to be at a cat sanctuary. So
yeah, there you go. I mean, that sounds like a way better thing that I'd rather attend anyway. So also
pillow cotton, yes, deodorant does suck. I do prefer antiperspirant. It's just when I'm traveling, it's easier to carry roll on.
Yeah.
So, are you on your second beer now?
I did open a second beer, and this one is specifically for you. Now, I bought this a couple of months ago, and I went, I'm kind of waiting for the right opportunity to open this particular beverage, because this isn't one you open every day. So this is from Two Town Cider House in Bend, Oregon. They are a wonderful cidery that produces a lot of fantastic stuff. I've really never been disappointed with anything that I've ever gotten from them. They make a wonderful pineapple cider and 20 different varieties of apple cider. This one in particular is, let's just say it's a hell of a bottle. Okay, so this is the Two Town Cider House Super Bad Apple. It is a super imperial ale made with fresh pressed apples, aged in oak, and it clocks in at 12.5%.
Jeez.
12.5%. Like, we're approaching IPC improvements for Intel and AMD over the last two generations. Like, that's a hell of a percentage point.
My second drink is the same thing because the hotel had no options.
Right.
Yeah, but it says hard cider 5%. What's soft cider? Apple juice.
Soft cider is apple juice, actually. Yes.
Okay. Fair.
Yeah, I don't know if they differentiate in.
The only differentiation is between apple and pear and other fruits. And to be honest, there's only one type of apple cider I really like, and that's called Thatcher's, and it has to be draft. The stuff out of a can and the stuff out of a bottle is just so different.
Yeah.
Aside from that, it's any sort of pear or fruit cider is preferred, as long as it's not Magners.
I do like a good pear cider. I wish you had spent more time in Salem when you were here. There's actually a wonderful cidery called 1859 that is about 3 miles from my house. And it is absolutely fantastic. I also wish we weren't under COVID protocol when you were here, because that would have been awesome too. We actually could have gone to a tap house or something. But yeah, 1859 cidery is a... Go ahead.
So now that I'm an analyst and not a press junkie, I can actually go places of my own volition and not have to worry about the content I produce.
Right.
So at some point, Intel's going to need me in Oregon, and I'm going to say, Jeff, I need a cameraman.
There you go.
Let's just sort stuff out.
Yeah, I've been talking to them about some hands-on time up at Hillsboro recently. So who knows? They may invite you out within the next 3 to 4 weeks. So
as long as it's not this year, I've still got another 60,000 miles on my travel bingo card between now and Christmas, and that is not a joke. I had a 10-day stretch of where I was meant to be at home between 2 trips in the US, and I've had a company come in the middle and say, "Can you spend 3 days in the US?"
Yeah.
Like, only if you fly me worth flying. by which I meant business, and they said we can do premium economy.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
the last plane I was on was the plane that left CES pre-pandemic. I flew from Vegas home,
and that's only an hour trip for you.
No, it's closer to 2.5. It's a little bit longer than that. It's a 14-hour drive.
Is this a pedalo?
No, this was a 3x3. It wasn't a puddle jumper. And we were at cruising altitude, but it's closer to 2.5 hours. The last plane that I was on was leaving Vegas, not knowing that we were about to literally like no longer exist as a society. So that was kind of a weird trip. People that I spent a good amount of time with there were sick for a month afterwards, and I'm like, wow, you really caught the plague at CES this year, didn't you? And I'm like, oh shit, they actually caught the plague.
Yeah. I think I went on one other trip to the US after that in mid-February, maybe early February. I think it may have even been server related.
Yeah.
It's because I always thought that CES was my last trip, and then I remember, no, actually I went on something else.
Yeah.
I have this weird constitution. I've still not caught it, or at least I've never knowingly caught it. I'm not the sort of person to get colds either. If I am ill, it's jet lag, which for me is an occupational hazard by the travel I do. So
right. Yeah, I'm not one who gets sick all that often either, and I actually did finally catch COVID. My
kids as well.
Yeah, my daughter finally brought it home. And she had kind of the sniffles for like 3 or 4 days, and we didn't think anything of it because it's like, oh, she's got a cold, no big deal. And then all of a sudden, my 2 younger kids got sick. So Little Bit and X both got sick and were starting to cough and whatnot. And we tested them, and it's like, oh, they tested positive. Oh crap.
So which is worse, COVID or lice?
COVID or lice? COVID is far worse. I've gotten lice a couple times as a kid, but I'm still dealing with long COVID, with like just no energy, short of breath walking up the stairs some days. Like I'm in better shape
that's
than
getting older.
It can be getting older, but even like last year, like I was in way better, like get up and get 'em, and like for 4 years almost, I worked full time and produced 2 videos a week. I'm having a hard time producing 2 videos a week with a full-time employee and no full-time job. Like that is so weird.
That's because you buy shit that doesn't work.
Sure, throw that back in my face.
Sorry, that's the 3rd time I've now milked that twice on stream.
It's
funny.
It's a good story because
it's on my mind.
Not a single component that I bought for that machine wound up working in that machine, and now I have a chassis and a power supply, a second motherboard that won't boot with any RAM that I own, a CPU that was $200, but if you try to find it now is $900 because this was like a once in a lifetime find or a once in a generation find kind of thing. And even that power button. So you know how I said I couldn't even turn the server on because it didn't come with a power button? I bought the power button assembly, which is a whole front I/O, USB, front audio, and an SD card reader. Mine didn't even come with the card reader. They had hollowed it out and put a blank in the place. So I didn't even get an SD card reader when I bought that for $60.
Jeff, check your color balance. You've gone very red.
Yeah. Here.
Hot take. Rant alert. Yes.
Rant alert.
Oh.
We haven't done that in a while, but rant alert. Yeah.
I mean, if
I have
if
one
you're
for you
close
too. So there you go.
I mean, it's when Intel did the 3175X launch, they shipped a full system with a Dominus Extreme, a 1600-watt EVGA power supply, which I've still got. And if you're closer, I would just say stop dealing with that crap and put the CPU in this, because the server CPUs work. Yeah,
no, I fully hear you. So we were talking before the show about like wish list items, like your 8th gen NUC 8121. You know, I have those types of items on an eBay search list, and I get notified whenever anything is posted that matches that search term. A lot of mine is like,
it's usually a RAM stick that goes into the system that you want.
Oh, totally. Yeah, like I need a matching stick for the set of 7 that I have, because one of them died and is blacked out with Sharpie. Like, I have this stick of RAM on my desk right now because one of them died and I need to find a second one. Yeah, so I have stuff like that pops up on my eBay feed all the time, but I've also got very specific items as well. Like, I'm keeping a very close eye on Tesla P100s right now, because Pascal is kind of on the you know, fading out point in its existence, and I'm waiting for those enterprise cards to hit like the $200 a piece for 16 gigs of what came with Pascal, HBM2, not just your GDDR5. Like I've got Tesla XPs in my gaming server right now, but man, a P100 was
out of yeah, it's I forgot what I was going to say now. Yeah, never mind. It's it's 7:30. Yeah, I was going to talk about something that isn't in our to-do list, but yeah, we should at least keep going through the news.
Yes,
because there was a launch this week.
Like, what's funny is there was a launch this week, but the news is about the thing that hasn't launched yet, which you just kind of stumbled into.
We're
again.
going in reverse chronological,
right?
Because right at the end of the stream, we're going to talk about chess. So
we got to talk about chess.
Reverse chronological order.
We've got to talk about chess. Ryzen, AMD, another, full disclosure. Ian is on the payroll. He's not a shill. Well, he is, but he's a shill for everyone. So he's an equal opportunity shill. You can.
If you pay me, I will shill for you, but your competitor will also pay me to
I'm probably going to get an invoice for this stream once I'm done, which is really weird. But anyway, Zen 4 has officially launched. You can go buy them in stores or online today. Reviews are out, and
reviews went live the day before retail.
You got 1 day to make a decision. Yeah, they went live Monday. You could buy on Tuesday. So anyway, Zen 4 has launched. This is the first PC x86 launch of a 5nm based chip. Obviously, Apple with the M2 did beat AMD to the market with a 5nm chip. But this is the first PC compatible, if you want to go like all the way back in nomenclature and call it whatever.
I debated this because I think Qualcomm's ATX Gen 3 is 5nm.
Oh, I didn't even consider that when I came up with that line.
No, nobody did. Their 7C Gen 2 might
You
be
have me
5,
questioning a lot of things
they
now.
Might both be 7.
Yeah. Okay, so AMD is third to market with a 5nm chip, but also claimed to be first to market, even though Apple and Qualcomm exist. There you go.
First 5nm x86.
Correct.
With chiplets and an I/O die that has a GPU and has exactly 28 PCIe lanes. Yeah, we could go down that route.
I don't know if you probably don't watch. There's a car show that I love called Roadkill. It's on Motor Trend, and they love to say we're winning right now because we are the only people who have ever towed a 78 Dodge Dart on the back of a flatbed with an LS engine in the back of it through Los Angeles at 8 p.m. on a Friday. And it's like,
it's
we're
like
winning.
Guinness World Records are very specific.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's kind of what this feels like now. So thank you for bringing some context to the whole discussion. Anyway, Zen 4 AMD 7000 is 100% official. You can go buy it today. Obviously, the big headlines are the 7950X 16-core, which is the 5nm variant on the brand new platform of their flagship chip. And the performance gains are very real and very... Hold on.
No,
There we go. Okay.
You're fine here. So.
Yeah, I'm fine to Zoom. YouTube for the last 2 weeks has been screwing with me. All right, we're back again.
So that may be because I did just send you a bunch of graphs on Discord if you want to show them at some point in the stream about some benchmark data.
Oh, yes.
Because, these may be my old employers, but I still have my own data.
Right, yeah. You still test independently even though you're also paid to test, right? So we did pause because I saw that OBS disconnected momentarily. Not sure what that was about. Anyway, 7950X, Zen 4, 5nm, 16-core, 32-thread, flagship piece. It's getting weird. This feels reminiscent of the 2000 CPU race to 1 gigahertz, if it were me. There hasn't really been a CPU war like that since then. Like we're seeing now. Like this is AMD and Intel kind of resurrected back into that who can punch harder the fastest.
Well, you got to think Intel should have been at least one generation ahead by now.
They really should have been.
So really, this shouldn't be a competition at all.
Mm-hmm.
But then you could argue that how long did we have very consistent 4-core, very similar performance parts for at least 4 or 5 years? And the graph didn't keep going up. It went flat, and now it's gone back up.
Right.
But the thing is, it's going back up very steeply.
Yeah.
Compared to what it did pre that straight line as well.
Right.
It's going through a new...
Intel and AMD are both kind of making up for lost time, because you can even go back about a decade and plot lines on a not linear, but fairly consistent chart of about like 6 to 8% per year improvement. For both of them. Although AMD flatlined and then jumped up with Zen and then jumped up again with Zen 2. And so they made a kind of like a dramatic resurgence.
AMD said when they launched Zen that the industry standard is 7% year on year. Not necessarily generation on generation, but just year on year. Right. And that their target was always to beat that. And I've sent some graphs to Jeff. We'll probably show them in a second. Yeah, but in the industry standard tests, it's been a very linear rise.
That's a very straight line. That's a very straight line.
Just to show people, just to tell people what we're seeing here. So there is an industry series of benchmarks that are standardized called spec, because we talk about specifications. And this is spec 2006.
Yeah. So here's 06.
What are you going to show?
I got 06 and I got 017 queued up. So.
Okay. So spec 2006. What it is a bunch of tests. There's about 17 of them. They are kind of real world. Some of them are based in real world. Some of them aren't. But the idea is to showcase different aspects of micro architecture, such that engineers can tell how they perform. So if you look at the subtests. Sorry, I ate some mango habanero jerky. That's
coming back on you.
Repeating on me. So there are some tests like GCC that test compile, which can be a cache and memory bound workload. And if you go up in that, then that's what your core is better at doing. Right. What this graph shows is integer versus floating point. So integer is all to do with control flow. Everything. So say you're figuring out what pixel of the screen you're trying to do some stuff in. how you find the pixel is integer. The math you do on it in games is floating point.
Right.
That's kind of how to think about it. So priority 1 over priority 2, some processors do better in others, and it depends on the balance of resources.
Yeah, and we talked on this channel last week about instruction sets, and some pieces of silicon are better at doing certain instructions than other pieces of silicon. Like x86 is a general purpose instruction. It can brute force your math, but it's not going to be quick at anything, whereas something that is simply trying to do a reflection is programmed to do that reflection. So, like measuring the volume of an Olympic swimming pool, would you want to do it in a measuring cup, or do you want to take a laser measuring tape and calculate the volume real quick? Like, that's kind of the essence of what we're looking at here.
Yeah. So I have all the individual test data that's going to be behind a paywall on my newsletter, but what I've got here is a geomean, and that's very industry standard. This is spec 2006. There is a 2017 version, but actually a lot of the embedded market and the ARM market like 2006 because it's a lot more related to their workflow.
Right.
These are all optimized for AVX2, so we're not doing any special AVX 512. Spec is sometimes cited as you can reuse the Intel compiler. You can compile out the wazoo and you get another 50% performance if you optimize everything for Intel. If you optimize everything for AMD, use the AMD compiler, then it becomes more of a contest of who has the resources to optimize the compiler.
Right.
So here we're just
who has more cache is kind of what it comes down to. Right.
Yeah, CASH, not CACHE.
Exactly. Touche.
No, to be honest, Jeff, that was a great joke you didn't realize you made.
Yeah.
So
as is usually the case.
Yeah. So what we see here, Intel, we're going from Broadwell all the way up to Alder Lake, the P cores, and you can see Broadwell, Skylake, Coffee Refresh, Comet are all kind of within that same window. Then we get a jump up to Rocket, and then a jump up to Alder.
Right. So we've got Broadwell, Skylake, Cascade, Rocket, kind of right in that range right there.
Coffee. Yeah, Coffee and Coffee Refresh, and then and then for AMD we go from I've got the Zen Plus because that's essentially what Zen was meant to be.
Right.
And then Zen 2, and then a big jump up to Zen 3 because Zen 3 was essentially a redesigned core, fresh bottom line, and then Zen 4, which is the new, is actually almost the same jump as Zen 2 to Zen 3.
Right.
It's not in terms of percentage, just in terms of the raw number. And Zen 4 is meant to be a slight update to Zen 3. The thing is, we can actually put Raptor Lake on this graph as well. I sent you a version with Raptor Lake.
Oh, did you? Let me grab that real quick. Oh, there it is. I
don't know if Discord sent them in order. That's the problem.
They didn't send them in order, but I've got it. So there's Raptor Lake right up here.
Yeah. So Intel said that Raptor Lake is plus 15%.
Yeah.
Technically it's on spec 2017 integer. We can look at that data if you really like. Yes. I have a 2-hour. So I didn't have time to get a review live at 6 a.m. on Monday because I landed at midnight on Monday. So instead I did a 2-hour live stream.
Yeah.
And
so here's your
I go through all of this there.
Yeah, so here's your spec 2017. You got Raptor Lake and Zen 4 right up here.
I did send one to you that was spec in 2017, but the x-axis is year, and I really like the year graph.
Okay,
you can pull that up.
I see that one as well. Let me. You sent me like 20 graphs. What am I supposed to do here?
Because I'm a numbers man. If I can't give you numbers, then yeah. So we can see that between Skylake and Coffee Lake Refresh, 2015 to 2019. It was a flat line. Yeah. And then Intel, the rate of improvement of Intel from Comet Lake up is a straight line as well. Year on year, we're not getting the same percentage, but we are getting consistent raw improvement.
So you've got Broadwell back
with,
here, you've got Coffee Lake, you've got Coffee Lake Refresh, then you've got Comet Lake, and then we start accelerating again. As you can see, we kind of flatlined for almost 4 years right here in the middle.
And this is single thread performance as well.
Right.
This is not a multi-thread yet. But then you can see the line from Zen Plus to Zen 2 to Zen 3 to Zen 4. That's pretty much a straight line as well.
Right.
Which is amazing to have two companies that are essentially doing straight lines.
It's insane. And I kind of talked about this either last week or a couple weeks ago about it's insane that the CPU war is heating up like it has because both companies have really found a groove and have really genuinely been improving the speed of their products. Because sometimes you'll get benchmarks that are like, oh yeah, we're 50% faster in this one specific thing that we built instructions for to do that one specific thing, a la NVIDIA with ray tracing. All of a sudden we have ray tracing cores that are supposed to do path tracing in hardware. Amazingly enough, they're 300% more efficient at path tracing. But this is raw performance.
This is none of that.
This is not specialty instructions. This is raw performance data. This is brute force instruction on x86, x64 that results in real world gain across the board, across all instruction sets. So to see 13% year over year for 4 generations now for AMD and 3 now for Intel, and no sign of slowing down for either of them, is insanity.
So just to clarify, some of this is uplift due to DDR5, especially the later. AMD,
but that's still generational improvement.
IPC.
I will still give it.
Right.
You're still, moving forward. So
these CPUs aren't IPC. The graph you're showing isn't IPC. Mm-hmm. This is the performance of the highest performing part of the retail SKU list.
Right.
So this is 12900K, 11900K, 10900K, 9900K, 8700K. This is 7950X, 5950X, 3950X,
2700X. Right.
So, yeah. So this isn't IPC. IPC in itself is a weird number because you should the argument is you should test product to product, but the companies decide what products they want to sell, and that's what you test. Right. If you reduce the core frequency, you're creating an imbalance between the core frequency, the fabric frequency, and the memory frequency. And that's not a balance that the vendor agreed to. So I'll fully admit, I used to do fixed frequency testing across multiple generations to determine IPC, but you'll find that if you did 3 gigahertz at DDR3 1866, and then the next generation was at 2133, and then the next one was at 2400, but the top frequency of those parts were 4, 4.2, 4.4, then you're actually reducing each core frequency by a different percentage amount, but keeping the memory frequency the same, keeping the fabric frequency the same, which means that those tiers are unbalanced. So are you actually measuring an IPC, or are you just doing an artificial measurement based on what you believe IPC should be?
Right.
Really, we should be talking you should arguably be talking about performance per clock, PPC.
Yeah.
However, if you divide by the frequency to get the performance per clock, you'll find that 2 gigahertz processors get a higher number than the 5 gigahertz processors, just because memory has time to adjust at 2 gigahertz that it wouldn't do at 5. So you get more pipeline levels at 5. And this is why I just test stock peak processor. I will clarify, not the KS, not the X3D.
Right.
Special cases.
Right.
However.
Yeah, the Extreme Edition processors need not apply to normal logic, because those are usually one-off technologies that are like, we're going to make this benchmark bend to our will no matter what we have to do. I'm actually midway through writing a video about what happened to SLI and Crossfire and multi-GPU configs. And the interesting thing is, it's down to kind of the speed of light and electrical transfer and latency in the short distances between chips and the bandwidth that you can support between them and what is actually needed to share a memory cache between two chips that are not only not on the same PCB, but across PCIe lanes. Even with a dedicated SLI bridge, the faster you go, the more you're fighting latency from the CPU to the memory. And even if you can share a memory table, by the time you're able to access that memory table, you're probably a clock cycle or two behind, which introduces more latency into the system. And it's a really...
It's not even that. You could be a millisecond behind, and in a frame, that's everything.
Right. If you're talking the difference between a 4 millisecond and a 5 millisecond frame, that's the difference between 140 and 170 FPS. And you're going to introduce latency just for your processing overhead. And it's a really weird thing.
And if you add one GPU, that's you having X amount of latency
Right.
2 GPUs mean you X square that issue, and 3 GPUs means you X cube that issue. So you compound your problem 8 times by having 4 GPUs.
Right.
Now,
and
this is probably a question we should save to the after show, but I want to ask you about chiplets on RDNA 3. Again, another thing that was kind of... So we'll say that to the after show. If
you know what? Go ahead and float your question now. I'll give you like a gut reaction, and then maybe we'll dive in the after show. By the way, join the Patreon if you want to get in the after show. So what's your question? I'm curious.
So we know that RDNA 3 is chiplets.
Yes.
That's been confirmed.
Yes.
Are those chiplets compute or cache?
Ooh. So you're talking
the word. Hang on.
Okay.
Hang on.
Okay.
When you hear that RDNA 3 uses chiplets, your first instinct reaction is those chiplets are compute.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So if I ask you, are those chiplets compute or cache? Now that you've had a second to think about it, you don't know.
Boy, as someone who understands the architecture of Zen, and understands the infinity fabric and the shared cache between them, so individual cache and then shared cache pool and everything that kind of goes into that.
And vertical cache.
Right. I'm assuming the same architectural benefits and drawbacks apply when it comes to RDNA 3, because it's the same engineers designing the same kind of fabric across those platforms. Is it cache or is it compute? If we're talking about Zen, I would say it's compute with an L2 cache that's shared, but an L1 cache that's separate. And so your individual cores will still be fastest when they have low-level access to the memory. As far as L1,
you're thinking too much.
Am I thinking too much? Okay.
Yeah. The question is the compute of the GPU monolithic with cache vertically integrated?
Ooh, okay.
Or do we have multiple compute chiplets connected to a central I/O die, but in a GPU context?
Gotcha.
One is easier than the other.
Yeah.
And not easier in the sense of 10% easier. I'm talking about multiple decades of research more difficult.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why Apple's solution kind of only works in specific scenarios.
Yeah.
And to your SLI Crossfire point, right? And also, look, there is a question deeper of price.
Yeah.
Cache chiplets, vertically integrated, are going to be cheaper than compute chiplets using EFOB like the MI250X high end.
Right.
So if they're
you have me questioning my whole reality
that,
right now. I don't know if you know that.
I put this question to multiple people in the press who were at the show this morning over breakfast, and multiple people of them told me, "Sod off, I need my coffee." but the simple question of, is RDNA 3 chiplet is cache or compute? There was not one side got a higher percentage than the other, but it was closer than you think.
But it was like 65-35 or even like 60-40 or something like that. Yeah.
There were 5 of us, so yes.
Okay, so 60-40. Cool.
So we have kind of gone off on a tangent with the Ryzen 7000
right.
Zen 4 stuff.
Back to like overall compute generation over generation as we're looking at, these kinds of graphs. I kind of related it to the 2000 gigahertz race, which, we're about the same age.
No. Sorry, you mean the year 2000? I thought you meant
year
2000 gigahertz.
No. The year 2000.
2 terahertz. 2 terahertz processors.
The race.
Yes, Jeff confirmed it.
No. The race to 1. Like we went,
but I still want 2 terahertz processors.
Oh, totally.
You promised.
Totally. Can you imagine the heat? Anyway, but no, like...
sorry, yes I can. You've seen what I've got.
No, the race to 1 gigahertz was insanity. Because we went from, essentially Intel with the Pentium 2 233 to AMD releasing a 1 gigahertz CPU, all of them basically on the same instruction set and the same process core and the same node and everything else, within about 2.5 years. Like, we went from 1997 to 2000, like June 97 to 2000, and we went from 233.
You know what happened? What they probably did is at the fab, they said, well, what if we reduce our guard bands and only supported a 3-year warranty, but actually 3 years rather than 7, but we marketed as 3 because we want a wider guard band.
Yes.
If we reduce the guard band, up the frequency.
Right.
I mean,
no, that's that.
This is how the KS processor exists in the first place.
Yes.
It probably has a higher failure rate.
Is Intel going...
If you accept that with the price, then
right.
It's a product.
Right. If Intel goes, instead of a 99.7%, success rate over 12 months, which is generally how companies measure shrink or failures or warranty claims or whatever else, they usually expect between 0.3 and 1% of whatever product they ship to fail. I don't know if I'm stepping on any toes there, but I've been on that side of the industry too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so 0.3 to 1%, it's just a write-off at that point. We'll replace those parts, not a problem. If you accept a 2.5% shrink on your 12-month outlook, you can push your parts a lot harder.
Revenue.
Right. And especially if you get the revenue back on them. Right. So
it scales, right?
Right.
It sounds bad that you're playing with the warranty rates of your customers, but in war we call this acceptable loss.
Right. Yeah. There's acceptable casualties as you're moving through, and CPU war knows no holds no bars when it comes to that. I was going to say it has no victims, but there you go.
Everybody's a victim, I guess.
Right. Well, we've talked about when companies compete, we win. Competition breeds better results for the consumer, and the fact that both AMD and Intel are producing amazingly efficient chips at the same time, at the same growth rate, it means we're going to win as consumers.
Yep.
We went through almost 7 or 8 years of complete Intel dominance where AMD was a non sequitur in the industry. That AMD admittedly gave up with their bulldozer architecture and said, like, we need a complete reset because the direction we're heading doesn't scale. It's not sustainable. It's not going to compete. And we can continue producing, but we're just going to fall further behind year over year unless we do something about it. And so AMD took 5 years out to develop Zen.
If you want to learn about this story, I have a one-on-one interview, 2 hours long, with Mr. Jim Keller himself.
Yes.
And he says there were people inside AMD who were content with 5% year-on-year increases, who didn't believe they could match Intel. Those people ended up leaving the company out of spite because they didn't like how he was changing the way people are thinking.
Right.
It's a great interview. It goes into philosophy. It goes into reading. It goes into how you make an engineer an executive that cares, how you self-care for your employees.
Yeah, no, I've watched that interview, and it is a fantastic bit of deep dive into not only the technical aspects of the rise and creation of Zen, but also kind of the philosophical and psychological aspects of engineering as well. It's really good.
I re-listen to it perhaps once or twice a year, and whenever I do, I get this overwhelming urge to go expand my horizons through books. And at one point he says, if you haven't read Machiavelli, you don't know nothing. And I've never read Machiavelli. Who's Machiavelli?
Right.
But in the same guise, at least once or twice a year, I feel like I want to go cook a beef Wellington, and it just turns out I'm hungry. I then go eat, and the desire just goes away.
But by the way, watch Up Is Not Jump's review of a beef Wellington. That should be required viewing.
I watch Sorted Food just because they're nearby and they have the same humor. But
no, Up Is Not Jump has humor that you would you would fall right in line with. So,
I'll wait until Skull puts a link in the chat.
Yeah. To that point, even Intel flatlined late into the 2010s because there was no competition from AMD that was making them change. They were jumping up between 5 and 7% generation over generation because there was no one chasing them. And
so the reason why Bulldozer isn't on this graph is because we compile spec to AVX2 base.
Right.
Bulldozer didn't support AVX2.
Right.
Zen 1 did with only 128-bit.
Right, and
Zen 4
and Zen 1 would be probably right about here on the chart, just over 3.
I think it'd be a bit higher because there was only like 3 or 4% difference. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
The reason why I don't have the Zen 1 numbers there is because I didn't regression test that far back, I don't think.
Okay.
So.
The interesting thing about Zen 1 was they released it at consumer pricing, but it immediately shook up the high-end desktop market because
HEDT
they
killed it.
Right. Zen 1 hands down killed Intel's HEDT market. Because for $329 for a Ryzen 1700, you got an 8-core 16-thread that was only like 3% clock for clock slower than a Broadwell CPU, than something like a 7820X that costs literally twice as much. That was a $600 SKU when it launched, versus $329 on Zen 1. And
329, that sounds like a very familiar price point.
Oh, it seems to be always the price point that people want to enter the market at. Like, we're going to shake things up, but only in this narrow segment between 300 and 340.
It should have been $419.99.
honestly, it probably should have been, but at the same time, they also had the 1800X for what was it, $399, and the 1850 for $449.
Didn't the 1800X come out later? And I think you remember. I think you're talking about the 1950.
Oh, no, that was
1850.
No, because that was Threadripper. 1900 and 1950 were Threadripper.
That's what I mean.
Right.
But there wasn't an 1850.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, you're right. Sorry. The 1800X was $399, and then the 1900X debuted at $499, and that was the Threadripper platform. Yeah. And as weird as Threadripper was, especially Gen 1, and especially Ryzen Gen 1, it immediately shook up the high-end desktop market to the point where Intel abandoned it until next year. There hasn't been...
We don't know. Nothing's confirmed.
Nothing's confirmed, but we've seen the dies, so this just... Hold on. Yeah. Threadripper was a big shot across the bow to Intel. That said, you're gonna need to stop scaling down your parts or simply improving by 5% year over year, or we're going to catch you. Because even this...
The AMD was able to do that because they ring-fenced the budget of the CPU team,
right,
to the detriment of the GPU team.
Right.
The GPU team is still a fraction of the size of NVIDIA. People say, why can't AMD compete? And it's because
they've got 15% of the engineering prowess.
But again, you could say, well, how are they able to compete on the CPU side? Because Intel went through a period of stagnation. You have to have NVIDIA enter a period of stagnation.
Right.
And they haven't. If anything, they've hyper-accelerated. And yeah,
right.
Also the revenue's hyper-accelerated and the crypto market hyper-accelerated, and they're paying some of the costs for that. It's not going to be the gut punch.
Right.
AMD can't provide the same sort of gut punch in that market.
AMD came in 2017 in literally the perfect storm to introduce something to shake up the market at any point in the market, whether it was the $300 price point or the $1,000 price point. They chose the $300 price point, which shook up the $1,000 price point, because you had CPUs like the 7900X and the 7940X that...
It shook up the $1,723 price point for the 10-core Broadwell E.
For the 7980XE,
in my
right.
system at home.
There was the
the 6950X.
Oh, right. Okay. That's right. 6950X. Yeah, sorry. I was jumping ahead of generation still. Sorry, generation still.
It's like TOS versus TNG, right? If you don't skip ahead generation.
Right. Yeah. Who's this bald guy? What the hell?
I'm a serious Shakespearean actor. Why am I fighting the Klingon people?
All of a sudden they have ridges. They don't want to talk about it. It's weird.
And yeah.
But yeah, but yeah, because Intel went through a period of stagnation where they couldn't die shrink or they couldn't tick or talk for a certain period of time between 2015 and 2019, they just kind of flatlined. AMD went.
I will say that NVIDIA did stagnate a little when they had 4 generations on 28 nanometer.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that was a time AMD had ring fenced the CPU, so weren't doing anything in the GPU.
Yeah.
But NVIDIA at the time made that massive efficiency leap on 28 nanometer.
Correct.
Was that Kepler?
That they went from Maxwell to Pascal, and
Fermi to Kepler.
Fermi to Kepler was a big one. But
on 28 nanometer. I'm just talking about the 28 nanometer parts. The point they went 4 generations, but the 4th was such a massive efficiency gain. It was effectively a node jump without being a node jump.
Yeah, the 700 series to second generation Kepler was a massive jump from the original Fermi. But even then, even the leap to Pascal from Maxwell in 2016? That was a 60% improvement.
That was 28 to 14 nanometers.
28 to 16 or something. Yeah. 16 nanometer.
So you also got a node improvement along with an efficiency improvement.
Right, and so
compounded.
You know, if you want to take like IPC, which kind of doesn't exist in graphics cards, but follow me. They had right around a 60% improvement for the same size die, which is absolutely insane. If you've ever looked up like die sizes for Kepler when they started getting to like the GK102s and GK100s, and then you look at Pascal, it's like 1/3 the size and twice as fast. Like it's freaking insane. What NVIDIA did without anyone nipping at their heels. Like NVIDIA was in a period of like AMD doesn't even exist. Like we can just kind of go about our business and here's Pascal. Have fun. And then they did kind of hit a little bit of a breaking point. Turing was definitely not the architecture that should have ever existed. It was a 5 to 10% improvement at best, and all they did was charge more for the same performance. But then the jump to Ampere, and then what I'm hearing again, the jump to Ada, to the Lovelace cores, is going to be just about as big as Maxwell to Pascal was. And
so I mean, I know this is meant to be the Zen 4 segment, and we've started talking about NVIDIA GPUs for whatever reason.
We get into the weeds with every single segment, so it's fine.
So I'm not normally the GPU reviewer. I've been the CPU reviewer for ages, but my background is I programmed GPUs in CUDA back when it was the RX 260 and 280X and whatever. Looking at the 40 series today, as announced, regardless of what AMD comes out with,
right?
The fact that they're moving from Samsung 8 nanometer to TSMC N4,
TSMC N4, 5, whatever,
yeah. Just that efficiency change based on I've tested smartphone SoCs that do that change, and they get 30% performance per watt for the same architecture.
Yeah.
In this case, NVIDIA is also improving the architecture with the performance efficiency. It means I don't necessarily care that they're peaking at 450 watt. I may just go out and buy a 4090 and cap it at 250 watt, because I know that'll be more efficient than any 3090 Ti that I'm going to buy. And I'll pair that with a Ryzen 9 7950X at 65 watts, because that's super sodding efficient as well.
Right,
which is actually a good segue into, even though I didn't produce any data, but you've seen
into the chess discussion or
AM. Oh. No. Let's finish this, because I know we've just got 2 hours.
Yes.
AMD's Zen 4 at 65 watts eco mode is a beast.
Yeah.
If you can, did PC World do a 65 watt review written? I know they did a video, but simply put, right.
Let me see if they have a written one. They have one on Threadripper. That Threadripper isn't dead. 5.7 gigahertz flagship. Here we go. I got something.
Just type in PC World 65 watt.
Yeah.
So the point is that this. I think this is an early one. This isn't the review.
Right.
The issue is these chips, the 16-core Zen 4, 170 watts TDP, 230 watts package power tracking, 5.7 gigahertz max. Now, whether you see those numbers is we're now entering an era of being more current limited than architecture limited, which is another discussion for a different day. It's in my video if you want another 2-hour live stream to watch. But if you reduce the power of that package power tracking from 230 to 65, so a quarter less than, more about a quarter
ish,
you get the same single-threaded performance at 5.7 gigahertz, and I mean literally the same.
Right.
And it's above Alder Lake in a lot of tests.
Yeah.
Your multi-threaded performance drops, but it drops to as if it was a 10-core or a 12 core. Excuse me. Somewhere between the 8 and the 12 core.
Right.
So you lose about a third of the performance for losing 75% of the power. Now, I'm coming from a 10-core 6950X. That just sounds insane. I can run that chip at 65 watts, and it's going to outclass anything my system does. Okay, yes, the chip is $700, and why would you run a $700 chip at 65 watts? I pair that 65-watt PPT CPU with a 4090 limited 250, and I've got a nice little machine that could easily be small form factor quote, depending on how you want to put the 4090 in the small form factor, do whatever you want. That's insane, and I think full system power at peak is going to be less than 500 watts.
Right. I
in 2022.
I've done
an ampere. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. I've done a number of reviews on this channel where I've either reviewed a GPU or a CPU, and I've said repeatedly that even in a gaming sense, even in like I want solid, 1080, 1440, or even 4K performance out of this chip, I'm gonna value fan speed over peak efficiency or over peak performance, because I don't want to listen to a 3000 RPM blower fan when I can lower the performance 10% and listen to a 1400 RPM fan. I'm not losing that much in performance, but I'm gaining that much in my own personal sanity. And so typically
and stability.
And stability, right. And longevity even. Because So
question for you.
Yeah.
Last 3 games that you played.
Ooh. Last 3 games. Elden Ring. I did a stint in Elden Ring. There's an indie game that I am a huge fan of called Teardown, which is a voxel-based heist destructible environment game, and it's freaking... I can't gush enough about that game. And I don't remember the 3rd game because I spent all the time in Teardown.
Okay, so the last 3, so your graphic demands are a lot more than mine. Last 3 games I played were Vampire Survivors.
Okay.
Because that is the best $3 game that you will ever buy. Then it's essentially idle games where I use hex editors because I can't be asked to wait around on an idle game.
Right.
And I think the last 3D game I may have played was Final Fantasy in an emulator.
If you want to know the 3rd game, it's probably the Ocarina of Time PC port.
Yeah.
But on my handheld, on a Vega 8 graphics, or Vega 6 in this one even. Like,
yeah.
Look at that, it's gorgeous. It's widescreen, it's HD, it's beautiful, it's OLED. Yeah.
But the amount of graphics power you need for most of the games you play means that if you ever need to pump up to 450 watts because you've put in Cyberpunk or GTA 6,
I want to trace all the rays.
Game of the day. I've got an RTX 2080 because they're testing cards. I don't think I've turned on ray tracing once.
Yep. My streaming PC has an RTX 2080, and I don't use RTX on it because it's not enough to do reflections or real-time ray tracing or even path tracing or any of the even more simple stuff. It'll do DLSS to a decent extent, but still not enough to make it worth to turn it on.
I mean, I guess maybe the last 3D game I properly played was actually Borderlands 3 or whatever.
Borderlands 3 I did sink a lot of time into. I will admit to that one too.
And I think at the time I had my 1060 in the machine.
Oh, so you were only cranking at about 90 FPS.
Yeah, but it was 90 FPS at 1080 medium. I have 4K displays, and I do like to see the fancy stuff.
Right.
So perhaps I was jonesing for it then. But I think I would. So I may be at a company event the day it launches. I won't say which company, but they may be mad if they find out that I'm camping outside of Best Buy to go buy it when the doors open on October 12th. Maybe I have to buy one of their products at the same time to justify doing it.
Right.
Right. No,
What is your stipend? What is your stipend for that individual company? That's the next question.
Yeah. But what if I go in and I buy a 4090, an A770, and a 6950 XT, and just say I'm here to buy the RGB? My cousin said my system needed RGB, so I got one of each. Why are you laughing?
Oh, and toss in a Switch OLED.
Laughing? Anyway, do we want to wrap up this Zen 4 stuff?
Yeah,
because we need to speak about chess.
So yeah, the insane thing about Zen is from Zen Plus to Zen 2, and then Zen 2 to Zen 3, and then Zen 3 to the now Zen 4 7000 series, which, again, if you can talk to Lisa and get her to, like, you know, Zen 8, 8000, like, just name it the same. For Christ's sake. We went, okay, we have Zen 1, it's 1000. I get it. We have Zen Plus, it's 2000. Now we have Zen 2, it's 3000. Wait, hold on. What?
Oh, so I thought you meant Zen 8 as in 8 gigahertz.
That could be as well. As long as there's an 8 and an 8000 involved, I'm fine. Just make it meet again. Because we also went Zen 3 and 5000 for mobile and 4000 for like, make it make sense again. Please. Zen
5 is going to be a ground-up redesign like Zen 3 was. So
yes.
It's going to redefine the baseline.
Yep.
It may still look 90% the same, but the idea is that if you build a better foundation,
yeah,
you can upgrade it better.
Right.
I know that internally they're at least working on Zen 8, if not Zen 9 by now.
Oh, certainly. And I know Intel from the people that I've talked to is 5, 6, 7 generations in front of, like, okay, we can make this improvement, then we make this improvement, then we will knock everything out because we'll know how to do the base level better again and build back up again. So
I know the name of 19th gen, and I can't tell you because I might have a subpoena on my doorstep if I did.
I know you do. I'll get it out of you eventually. 2 more Angry Orchards and it's mine, buddy.
This is my last one. Okay, so Zen 4. When you've got the chips yet?
I have not. Edelman won't respond to me for whatever reason. Like I will get Edelman to respond to like 1 out of every 3 emails, maybe even 4, and it's like, oh yeah, we'd love to have you on board for the next launch, and then ghost. And then it's like, oh no, this person left and we need to, so whatever strings you need to pull, Ian, I need those, like,
the influencer community. The problem is the influencer community is still underserved in sampling because the amount of tech channels that are 100k plus,
right,
say, there are so, compared to the written press, there are so many of them that if they start giving them to one, they have to give them to them all.
I'm almost at 300k.
You're almost
like
Patrick Kennedy at Serve the Home should hit 100k this week.
I know
as well.
I'm at 300. I'm at 281 as of today, and why don't I have samples? Yeah. Like I get almost 1 million views per month. Where are my samples at?
You got to come in. I say you got to transfer to written media first.
Right. I could say so much right now because it's like I was aspiring to be like the 300,000 channel when I started, and it's like they get every sample without fail, and it's like, oh, maybe they've just got the longevity, and it's like all of a sudden I'm at like 5 pushing 6 years, and I'm like, where the hell are my samples at? Come on.
You know, I hear an Antec are hiring.
CPU or motherboard?
Both. So yeah, it's that's a shame.
Yeah.
So I will say I do know that they only sampled 100 kits worldwide.
Right.
Every kit had 2 CPUs, a motherboard, and some memory.
Right.
And for those 100 people, at least the ones in the US, the 2 CPUs they didn't get should have arrived today.
Right.
So chances are Gamers Nexus by the end of the week will have reviewed the other 2 as well.
Right.
I think the PC World ones have arrived. Mine might be arriving. I'm not there, so I don't know.
When it comes to
beyond that,
when it comes to the YouTube side of things, I know I'm pushing like top 50. Like I know I'm not quite there, but again,
top 50 US.
Yeah, top 50 US. But again, it's weird because I'm straddling 2 sides of a fence. I've got the home labber and the server and the small medium business, but then I've also got the enthusiast tech. And which branch of your company wants to talk to me? Because in one aspect, it's like, you know, how many 300,000 like level 1 techs just passed 300,000.
Same problem.
Like 2 years ago, and. But at the same time, 300,000 ain't nothing when it comes to enthusiast tech. So where do I fit in?
I'm having a slightly similar problem. I mean, okay, I'm still getting sampled, but that's because I'm a known face.
It's because you're Ian.
I've got the but now that I'm an analyst and an influencer, I call myself an analyst influencer. It's about an 80-20 split. That's how I advertise it.
Yeah.
They don't know which box to put me in. So
they just put you in none.
Or everybody thinks that somebody else is talking to me, which ends up nobody is talking to me.
Right. And that's kind of where I've landed too, where it's like, you know, oh, he does all the server chips, so, you know, consumer doesn't need to talk to him. Or consumer goes, well, obviously server's talking to him, so I don't need to talk to him. And I'm like, no, I want both of you to talk to me. Like, come on. That's my
it's almost as if you need 2 channels, but then that just divides who you are, and
right. But
they both fizzle
and it
out.
also dilutes my audience. And like I said, my audience has a good number of, you know, decision makers, is what you would call them in the industry, as far as
Okay. Put it this way: a traditional written media outlet will have a separate person reviewing consumer and enterprise. Maybe for one of those, you need to put, and I don't believe I'm saying this, Rhett in front of the camera for those pieces. And even though normally he may just be reading a script and you're the actual brains behind the operation,
right?
He becomes the face of one half. You become the face of the other. You give him 0 equity and put him back in his cage once he's done.
I hope he heard that, by the way. We actually discussed something like that, where he can start doing some videos. My ultimate goal is to get him on camera in some facet or another, and I've been slowly kind of introducing him with the integrations that we've been running with a lot of the ad work, and then he's also been kind of a comic relief in videos, and I think that's working very well, and it's the audience has been loving it, and the integrations are doing better, and it's been fantastic. But, you know, do I set him loose on a 13900K review like solo? No, I don't think I can. No offense to Rhett, but
no, you have to write the script,
right? And so
and as anyone does, it's a learned skill to read from a teleprompter,
absolutely,
and provide the same level of passion. The problem I have is that my passion is all in my head, and I have difficulty putting it into the camera.
Yeah,
and as a result, I come off sometimes a very unfazed by something that's actually quite astonishing, and therefore I have to force it. Therefore, it feels forced. It's a skill, just like interviewing is a skill, just like writing is a skill, just like video editing is a skill, just like existing is a skill, just like raising children is a skill.
So we filmed an integration today. Okay. We filmed a 30-second ad read, and it had a 15-second script and then a 30-second ad read, so it's a 40 plus second integration. the first time I did the audio capture for it, because it's 30 seconds of just script read, the audio had some cuts in it, and we weren't quite sure what it was from. Did I set my cell phone close to the mixer or whatever else? So I just went ahead and re-recorded it. But Rhett had already cut the ad. He had already done all the B-roll and all the transitions and everything else for the ad. And he goes, I just need you to read this again, but I need you to do it at the same length. And I went, at this point, my ad read, you know, timbre
Style.
and rhythm and it's identical. And I said, you can just slide this in and it'll be fine. The end cut was a difference of 200 milliseconds for a 30-second read.
Oh, nice.
And in fact, he put both of them side by side. And it was kind of like sitting in traffic where your blinkers will synchronize and then desync and then resync again.
Yeah.
If you've ever watched blinkers on like the 3 cars in front of you and all of a sudden all of them go pop, pop, pop. It did that. And then they desynced and then they resynced again. And it did that like 3 times through 30 seconds. And it was the weirdest freaking thing to listen to because the tone and the exclamation and the drop offs, and they were all
the same.
Completely in sync.
The problem I have is, so I've got a couple of people who watch my channel know that Linode is a sponsor on around half the videos, and Linode's great, and they've had no problems with me doing that and whatsoever.
Linode has been a phenomenal partner.
To me,
I will say, yeah.
I've had a couple of other companies in the industry who have said we want to do some ads, and they meet my minimum specification. What should be the specification?
I get it.
They meet my minimum specification for doing, but because I have this journalist background, I feel so. I sink inside when I start thinking about the fact that I have to do an ad read.
It feels gross, doesn't it?
Essentially, need somebody to come. I need somebody to come along and say, right, we're doing 4 ad reads today. You need to write the scripts, and we just need to do them and stand there essentially with a whip and go, right, record, edit.
Yeah.
The last time I did 2 ad reads, I did them in a hotel room in San Francisco because I just had the right amount of mental energy and confidence. I mean, don't get me wrong. The videos, the recording themselves was rubbish. I had to really edit the audio. I had to really edit the video. Both companies said, can you make edits? And that was 2 months ago. They email me once every 3 weeks saying, do you have an update? And I just have to keep saying I'm busy, when half the time in reality it's
like I just don't want to or have the energy or
it's not the energy. I just don't feel that I have the competence to have the same energy, to be the same enthusiastic monotonal guy with an accent.
It's funny.
We've actually deviated way off. We should finish up with chess before
we should finish up with chess. I think we have to finish up with chess. So so if you all want to jump onto the after party, we're probably going to continue this conversation about like what it's like to be a YouTuber / influencer / whatever else. I've got a number of stories, even just from like the last 2 weeks of working with companies, buying ad integrations, and frustrations therein, and the motivation and the confidence to be able to like produce some of those clips. I'm still kind of known as the Manscaped guy of the go shave your balls at Christmas time. Which, by the way, Manscaped just re-upped for another 3 months, so you'll be seeing some Christmas ads here soon. So that's
the thing. I've recorded 2 Linode ads since I started, and they've both had about 25 integrations each, because it's just so much effort to just do one. The fact that you're able to have fun with whether it's Manscaped
with all of them, right?
Yeah, I once had a cereal. I had a Magic Spoon wanted to do ads, and then they pulled out, and I thought that would have been fun. Yeah, but that sort of thing.
I actually did I'll say this one point real quick, and then we'll move on to chess. Hot chess talk here on Talking Heads. So I had
prepare your rears.
Yeah, prepare your rectum. I think we can say it 2.5 hours into stream. when I first started the channel, I tried to do like all the straight reads that you see. Like Linus does this a lot, like, and the segue to our sponsor. And then it's James or Colton or Linus himself doing like FreshBooks, brought to you by blah 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 blah. Click the link in the video description to learn more.
Them and it's fine.
Right, and it's like, yeah, when you reach a certain size, any news is good news, right? When a company is reaching out to me, I want to make it worth their dollar. I want to get the most clicks as possible to get the best dollar per, minute of my time as possible. And there was one video that I watched in particular, and it was on David Does Tech. And he did a Manscaped read.
Mm-hmm.
And it started pretty flat. It started like, today's video is brought to you by Manscaped and the Performance Package 4.0 with the blah, 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 blah. And we've all been in the situation where you're going on a date and you're trying to slay the Wookiee that's between your legs. He just like went straight into the absurd. And he had this entire blurred out screen.
Deadpan,
completely deadpan. And he's got lightsaber sound effects and Chewbacca screaming in the background and him like beating his crotch in a mosaic pixelated environment. And I'm like, I need to compete with that. And so
okay, I have an idea for your man. You probably have tons of ideas.
I've got a few, but I'm always interested.
If I said, who's the main character in Breaking Bad who plays Walter White? The actor, I forget.
Bryan Cranston.
So if I said Bryan Cranston, episode 1, Malcolm in the Middle.
A little bit of Hank. Yeah.
No, in Malcolm in the Middle, where he's naked in the kitchen.
Right.
Having his body hair shaved. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, you need to redo that.
Or Hal, excuse me. Hal, not Hank. Hal.
Yeah. And it's just Rhett reading the paper naked as his partner wife is shaving him because it's the hair for the birds, and then you just do the voiceover for Manscaped and it's just Rhett all the way, and the whole read is just panning bottom to top as Rhett is reading the paper and it's covering his most vital parts in the same way as
Oh, that's good. That's good. Because I've done a couple ads where it was just like straight up puns, where it was like, don't call the game on account of rain. Like I did that. I actually rewatched all of them today just to kind of get inspiration because they re-signed today. They signed 3 ads for 3 months, and I'm like, awesome. Like I got Manscaped in again.
So what
one ad per month times 3, right? So yeah, we're almost booked through the rest of the year now for ads, which is always great when a company reaches out and says, "Hey, can we do integrations?" And I said, "Yeah, it's this price." And they're like, "Well, we're not going to pay that." And I said, "Well, 19 other companies did, so get on the list."
Yeah.
That's fun as a
right if you have a regular cadence. I travel too much.
Right. But yeah, so I'm coming up with some new Manscaped ad ideas, and you probably saw the pork bun DNS registration ad in the last video. Hey, bro.
I may have skipped through that.
Sorry. Oh, you got to go back and watch the 1U GPU server. That ad is glorious. That ad has just about everything you ever want. And if you've ever wanted to see Rhett...
Either that or I turned off.
You got to see Rhett in the mullet. I mean, that really sells it. Anyway, hot chess news here on Talking Heads.
Spicy.
I don't even think did I bring up... No, I did. Okay,
There's no link in the doc because I added it in.
I don't know if we can even show a link to this. Like, I don't know if I even want the link in my hot chess news. Let's walk through it.
So again, because we've had a full disclosure for every topic this show, I am not sponsored by chess.com. I was once 30th in a equivalent of a state competition when I was 10. and I've not really played since because I find chess boring. But I understand.
I have a membership to chess.com, and typically I used it to play against my friends. Most of which I beat, the other of which is the son of a grandmaster, and he whoops my ass each and every time without fail. I think my record against him is like 3-197. Like it's not even close. So
yeah. So yeah, but my Google News feed is normally I keep track of sports in general and whether you count chess as a sport, physical versus mental. But I like to keep, I do know at least one or two or three of the major names in the chess world. Mm-hmm. The biggest one is obviously Magnus Carlsen because of he is insane and his rise is meteoric, and he is one of these genius savants. He used to have issues with personal interactions.
For those that don't know, he's the one that can play 40 games at the same time and kick all your asses. Like he can walk around a room with 40 chessboards and win every single game without even thinking. Like, yeah, he's insane.
I'll say that's not that impressive because there are people that have done it over the years.
Right.
But because of the social media, he's in that sphere. He's made millions, and I think he's only like 32 or something, and he's younger than us.
Yeah.
And he is and that's disappointing. But he lost a game, which is so stupidly rare, to a 19-year-old. Yeah. And then for the first time ever in his career, resigned from the championship who was playing and didn't give a reason.
Right. So Magnus entered
the Sinkerfield Cup.
Yeah. So Magnus entered this tournament like a lot of other chess people did. There were 170 or something like that in the tournament, and this is an invite-only event. And he ended up losing one of the semifinal matches to this 19-year-old kid, and. In an interview afterwards,
the 19-year-old is a grandmaster. They're both in the sort of their FIDE score, which 1,000 is meant to be the average, and you win if you go up, you lose, you go down. They're both 2,500 plus,
right? And
the world record for the highest score ever is 2,900. Right. So they are in the top 1% of 1% of chess players in the world.
Correct. And but they invite-only tournament, that they're matched up against each other, and Magnus loses, and he loses in such a way and in such a fashion that he goes, the 19-year-old was seemingly not paying attention and completely disinterested in the match. Like there were a couple of situations where you're going through all the arithmetic and all of the potential moves and adjustments that you can make on a chessboard. And he goes, I was sweating it at certain times. And this kid was just like, click. And he goes, this is what I do to other players, not what someone does to me. And that was kind of the interview that he gave afterwards.
People, the people at this level know everybody else at that level. They've played them multiple times. And the point is, over the number of games, you kind of understand when people are in certain positions, they usually take a certain amount of time to make a move. And depending on whether they're making an attacking move or a shorter move, there's like machine learning put over all of this to kind of see how a player plays. And that becomes part of the training for a competition. And going back to the FIDE scores, if you have a score 100 more than somebody else, you're expected to win 99.5% of the time.
Right.
If you have 200 more than somebody else, it's like 99.5% of 0.5%. You're going 2 standard deviations every time for 100 points, or it's 1 standard. It's something like that.
It's the decibel rating. It's square it every time.
Of this guy winning.
Right. It's square it every 3 points.
So the fact that Magnus lost, which is rare now, somebody said in the chat he's a bit of an ass, or he is an ass. That's partly because he's one of these savants, Asperger's, and people like that, like Musk, can also be.
Right. You're not good in social settings, but I know more than you in chess. Like, you know,
or Linus Torvalds.
Right.
Right.
Linus is a bit of an ass, and he flips off NVIDIA all the time, but he also knows his shit, and you don't dispute that. Like, there are those types that are out there.
So Magnus loses. He then quits out of the contest altogether, which is unheard of. I don't think it was a semi-final. I think it was like a round robin type thing, or there were more matches to play.
There were multiple matches left to play, and he withdrew from the tournament. And it's kind of a weird thing. And he just goes, I'm just going to end up playing this kid again, and he's just going to cheat again. And so he kind of took a stand and went, I'm not going to do it.
So the guy had already been banned from chess.com for cheating twice.
Yeah.
And it's turned out that one of his mentors / trainers was actually banned for cheating as well.
Yeah.
So that is what it is. But Magnus turned around and said, I'm not going to say anything because I will get into trouble, which is essentially, you know,
saying something without getting into trouble. Right.
Right. He didn't want to accuse him directly, but he also didn't want to say if he had any proof about accusing him directly.
Yeah.
And people so before the second match that they played together, which we'll get onto, obviously this kind of hit the chess world, and it also went into mainstream press and into my newsfeed and went into chess newsfeed. And it also went around the Twitter to the point where people were saying, well, this guy used to cheat when he was playing online matches by having AI training. Now, these people use AI training in their training. That's why it's there. They use the benefit of AI to help them analyze positions and do it better. What they're saying, what they're saying that when you're online, it's easy to cheat if you have, you know, a machine learning algorithm that essentially is choosing your moves for you. And then Elon Musk turns around and says maybe he was using anal beads to tell him the right move. So something vibrating up your backside when you're hovering over the piece, it's like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire type stuff, and somebody's coughing in the studio when it's the right. But because it's anal beads, nobody. How often do people in sports get stripped naked? Okay, they do urine tests, but nobody checks to make sure you got something halfway up your colon.
That's a performance answer I've never heard of before. But
again, Musk was no evidence, right? Of course, no evidence. Musk being Musk.
Must be.
I say that, and I'm going to AI Day on Friday. My invite's just been rescinded, probably.
Are you on their payroll yet, or is it still pending?
No, it's this is a thing. But
you're going to be driving a Rivian for the rest of your life.
I don't have a license. I'm not driving at all.
I know.
There is this. So the rumor propagates that he is using some form of enhancements that may be rectal related, or it may be something else. And so Hans Niemann, who's this guy who's been accused of cheating, says, he turns around and says, "No, I'm not." And at one point he says, "Look, I will play naked in my next if you want."
Yeah. And
obviously nobody forces him to. Chess.com reprimands Magnus for quitting out of a contest, an official contest, because you're not meant to do that. But does say, you know, this guy has been done with cheating before, and we don't like cheating. So then the Julius Baer Cup comes around the next week, of which there are 16 invited people playing, of which Carlsen and Hans are part of the team. They meet in the round robin. I think it's literally the second match.
Yeah.
So it's a round robin, so everybody plays, and everybody plays, and everybody plays. It's the second match. Magnus plays one move and resigns.
Yeah.
And then turns up, stands, because it's remote play, they're doing it online, stands up, turns his webcam off, disconnects. Everybody who's analyzing the match, because these people have match analyzers as they play, you know, other grandmasters, are basically going, did he misclick the retire button or something?
Yeah.
What's this? And again, he makes a statement saying, if I say anything. Now, he didn't resign from the contest. He actually ended up winning it.
Yeah.
Hans Niemann got through to the quarterfinals after the round robin and lost in the quarterfinals. So he still beat people.
Yeah.
And Magnus Carlsen goes on to achieve the highest ever FIDA ranking of 2900, new world record. And now he's made an official statement, which doesn't really say anything.
Yeah.
It basically says, I know this guy is, yeah. So Magnus's argument is, once a cheat, always a cheat.
Yeah.
Even though this guy's 19, but the guy who teaches him is a 56-year-old who's also been banned for cheating in the last 3 years. And the thing is, cheating is like, say, crowdfunding imagine you're streaming your chess on Twitch and you're taking move suggestions from the chat. That's considered cheating.
Right.
Because the whole point is you're meant... and
it's supposed to be 1v1. It's not supposed to be any outside influence. Yes. It's supposed to be, you know the game, you know the moves, you know your opponent, you know the situations. Chess is a very deep and... cerebral game, and the interesting thing is there's not a game of chess that has ever been played twice. There are so many infinitesimal number of moves and situations that you can't study for every situation with every piece on every single piece of the board. And when you start reaching this level of accusation,
Magnus is so good with his memory. If you said 1903 game, Russia versus US, round 2, move 16,
right,
he would say king to knights 4 or something.
Right.
And
he would go, I know the move to make in that particular game.
No, he remembers the move that happened in the game.
Yeah.
Because he has, that good memory. Then beyond that, you also have to identify good positions. And then beyond that, you have to be able to make the right move. And then beyond that, it's also the psychology of your opponent, if you consider that an element to the game. Some people don't. But yeah. And then there's the Musk tweet. Talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see because it's in your butt. And it's the interesting thing is this is still kind of in flux right now. There are still accusations and non-proof. I did read a piece that basically said most people have come out on defense of both sides. Don't in that particular game unless you have proof. And I think my audio's just cut off.
Yeah.
Don't accuse somebody if you don't have any proof. But a lot of the grandmasters have come out behind Magnus, and a lot of the non-chess players, us, we don't count in that. We play. We're just not. We're not competitive.
Like I said, I can beat my friends, but I can't beat anyone who's even semi-serious about learning the craft. Like.
Yeah. So, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of where the story sits today.
Right.
It's still in flux. Like I say, Magnus just won the Jules Baer. There's another tournament coming up in a couple of weeks that I think Magnus is due to attend. I'm not sure if Hans is. I haven't looked into it. I haven't proactively gone in search of news. This is literally just everything I've read from my Google News feed, because my Google News feed is now 50% to do with chess and anal beads. In the same story. They're not separate stories, I should clarify. Right.
Well, just give it a week, because Google will start giving you recommendations on both. Well, you clicked on this story. Maybe you're interested in...
Right. Okay. So
additional anal bead news.
So posit this. You know how Netflix does murder documentaries?
Yes.
Maybe this is the King's Gambit.
I would attribute this more to you buy a toilet seat off Amazon, and Amazon for the next 6 months says, "Do you need another toilet seat?" No, I only needed the one.
or just retelling the story. Instead of Drive to Survive, we have I don't know enough chess term. We have en passant to the rectum. I don't know. I know it's a chess thing. It's how do you dramatize something like this? Something that is seemingly somewhat absurd and unique. Again, the King's Gambit.
Right.
And because Magnus has been the king on top of the world. Romnipton asks, did you break another toilet?
En passant to the rectum. I think that's going to go in that might end up being a pinned comment in the Discord, or like I've got some famous ones up there, so maybe that one will make it. If
somebody's been taking timestamps, make that the timestamp for the chess.
Yeah, en passant to the rectum. That's what I want to see there.
Oof, you got to go see a doctor afterwards.
Honestly, I fell on that bishop like it.
It's that Big Bang Theory phrase. It's if I stick my foot up your butt, which doctor do you have to go see? And Sheldon says it depends how far it goes in. Only a small amount, the proctologist. Any deeper than the general surgeon. Yeah, there you go.
And I think that's a great place to end it. We're approaching the 3-hour mark, as is customary when Dr. Ian is on the show. Thank you very much for coming on. That was a lot of fun. I love it when we get to break world exclusives like Sapphire Rapids in the flesh and the 34 core upcoming Emerald Lake, Emerald Cove, whatever you want to call it, Raptor Lake based high-end desktop enthusiasts, not server but not consumer, whatever. That was a good show. So make sure to subscribe to Tech Potato over on YouTube if you like Ian's content. Subscribe to Craft Computing if you haven't done so already. Make sure to like this video. Follow me on Twitter at Craft Computing. Follow Ian on Twitter at Ian Cuttress. Do you also have a Tech Potato, or just more is more? Like, where are you at on Twitter? I can't keep up.
I have both, but the Tech Potato and the More the More are just essentially retweet accounts.
Gotcha.
I did recently start a newsletter, a Substack, if anybody's familiar with that.
Yes.
It's more-more.com. The second more has 2 O's, as in Gordon Moore.
Yeah, MORE-MOORE. Yeah.
Yeah, so on that, you'll see some of the scripts for the videos. I also do some of the more financial-based analysis. And it has a paywall that's typically for the financial stuff and some of the more detailed spec data. But it's more, people have been asking me for a written outlet post Nantech because they don't want to do just the video stuff. And so some of this stuff is so complicated that a 40-minute video, people prefer a 10,000-word article instead. So I'm offering that as well. It's free to sign up. I just passed 1,000 subscribers.
Nice.
And you may only get one email a month. One month you may get 5. But I hope
depends
you
on what month it
enjoy
is.
And I hope you, if you sign up, you participate. We get as much out of this as you guys participate. It's a labor of passion, labor of love.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why I got into this industry, is I'm so passionate about certain aspects of it, especially when it comes to enterprise hardware and business operations and things like that. Like, I made that my career for 15 years, and now I get to talk about that same kind of thing for a living with no one telling me what to do, and it's absolutely fantastic. So if you like this kind of stuff, make sure to join the Patreon. It helps support me and what I do. It keeps the lights on around here, and you can join the Discord server where you can talk with myself, John, Rhett, Steve, even Ian is over there, all the hosts from Talking Heads, and join the awesome community that hangs out over there. I think that's going to about do it for episode 253. Thank you all so much for watching. Again, Ian, thank you so much for joining us as a co-host. And as always,